How are you feeling? How long have you been here?
3 months, May 17th.
And what brought you?
That's difficult to answer.
I'm not clear. How is it that playing the piano for people has eventually resulted in your being here in the hospital?
That's difficult to answer.
this the end? There's a noise inside my head of crying people facing death. Is this the end? Is this the end? Oh, I'm burning in the stone. There's no place to hide. I'm burning in the stone. What have we done to the world? What have we done to the world? I'm burning in the stone. There's no place to hide. I'm burning in the stone. This is the final sweet dreams are made of these. Who am I to disagree? Travel the world and the seven seas. Everybody's looking for something. Some of them want to use you. Some of them want to get used by you. Some of them want to use you. Some of them want to be out you.
Won't anybody help us? What are we running for? When there's nowhere we can run to anymore. Can't afford to be innocent. Stand up and face the enemy. It's a do or die situation. We will be invincible. And with the power of conviction, there is no sacrifice. It's a do or die situation. We will be invincible.
Who the fuck is Karlyn? She's just some sweet lady. She's like in a knitting. She does like a knitting stream. She's like a knitting YouTuber. She does knitting.
Can we grow up a little bit and
Alt
not
Girl
be
sent
retarded?
$200. Have you seen the
Please.
work of Karlyn Borysenko? Anti-commie cult leader and is obsessed with looking at what actual far-left communists are talking about and organizing today, infiltrating them. They infiltrated the universities, schools, media. She has the receipts to back it up. Primary source evidence. Infestation is dire and she calls Republicans idiots eating slop. Agree.
Thank you for the big super chat. Yeah, oh, I know Karlyn B. She's solid. She's funny. I
The
like
great
her.
noticer sent $200.
Literally.
So
not
it's,
Ian.
it's not because I haven't dangled my junk into the combat zone on purpose to get some camera footage, but that's the big part of what's the
Is
problem.
that what you call reporters?
Go
and live
under, if
streaming?
you're going to do it,
Yeah,
go
seriously.
undercover. Otherwise you're wearing a hunk of meat in a lion's den. Nick Shirley, I love you. Take care of yourself, man. Karlyn Borysenko went undercover. Do stuff like that. Like if you want to expose this thing, don't pariah,
But
please.
Ian, here's and I agree with you to an extent.
And I've learned a lot from Karlyn Borysenko, who goes in undercover with the left. And I've figured out from looking at her work, like when I first saw her stuff, I was like, oh, she knows what she's talking about. I need to like connect with her. And she actually, the first time I got assaulted in 2025, followed me and sent me messages, and she checked on me for months, just privately. It was so nice to have somebody like, are you okay? But I could tell she knew what she was talking about, and I subscribe to her. I look at all her stuff. I've learned so much, and I thought I knew a lot. I've learned so much.
Well, you know, guys, I said yesterday that if people don't value this content, that I'm not going to do it anymore. And I mean that. I really do. And the fact that maybe YouTube notifications haven't gone out or something, I don't know what the fuck is going on. Right now, there are 35 live viewers and only 18 likes on the video. That's, no, you don't. Just to be really clear, you don't. I meet no one in person unless I have known them a very long time and I have spoken to them in person, and they have done great service to the community. You don't, I don't mean to be rude. I don't know who the fuck you are. There are people in this community who have been around for years and years and years. There are people that I have met in person. There are people who I've hung out with. There are people who bought me drinks. There are people who I bought them drinks. Like, I have no problem meeting people as long as they have been around for a long time. I know who the fuck they are, and they have done great service and provide value to the community. So I don't mean any offense, but you guys are insane if you think I'm meeting up with you at a protest when I don't fucking know you. Like, I mean, I just think that's just like, listen, I know that people form relationships with people on the internet and stuff like that, but you have to understand, I don't know you. Like, and so that is the case. There are people I would meet up with Reagan in a second. I would love to meet Reagan in person. I would even meet up with Bot, even though she's weird, but she's been around a long fucking time and I know who she is. Okay? Okay? Oh, no. Okay. What's the left's definition of capitalism, pizza person I've never spoken to? What is the left's definition of capitalism? Let's see your channel activity. This is your first stream ever. You've been around the channel a long time. You've never even chatted in before, bro. So what is the left's definition of capitalism? Do you guys know why I would always say no to meeting up with people who say, hey, Karlyn, how can we protect you at protests? Who the fuck are you? Oh, I've been around the community forever. Oh, yeah? Do you know the left's definition of capitalism? Still waiting for an answer, bro. You've been around here forever. What's the left's definition of capitalism? Go. Why does a stranger want to come into my chat and try to get me to tell them how to meet up with them? And by the way, they have a Nazi uniform, so maybe they could be on the far right and they could hate me. They could also be on the far left and hate me. Yo, not Tina Kotex! Thank you so much for the 5 gifted channel memberships. What a fucking legend. Thanks, bro. I appreciate it. I post cop watching videos. I'm new to your channel. Okay, so that wasn't the fucking question. What is the left's definition of capitalism? If you know so much because you watch protest coverage, then you should know this answer. This is literally leftist socialist 101. Okay? So again, if you don't understand why it would be just absolutely fucking unthinkable for me to meet up with a person that has never watched my channel before, I don't know who the fuck you are. Can we pretend that you don't know? Can we just pretend that I'm right about this and you don't know shit about shit and you just got here and you think you know everything when in fact you know nothing? I gatekeep. Yes, I provide my sources for fucking everything. Nope, wrong. Wrong. You don't know more than the dumb commie. Congratulations, chat. Do you want to share with our new ignorant friend the left's definition of capitalism? I'm just going to have the chat answer. here. What is the left's definition of capitalism, chat? You see, there are people on this channel that don't just show up for protest coverage. There are people on this channel and in this community that study the left every single day using the left's own documents. There are people in this community, more than just me, that go undercover with Antifa and hear it from their mouths directly. We don't just show up for protest coverage. We show up and we cover the left every single day for years and years and years, regardless of the news cycle, regardless of if I'm getting 50 live viewers or 3,000 fucking live viewers on protest coverage. It doesn't fucking matter. We cover the topic every single day as a research group, as someone who, a group of people that are studying the left like you would study a tribe out in the jungle that's never been exposed to humanity before, or like you would study a zoo animal. That is what you are doing here. So the left's definition of capitalism is private property ownership. Private property ownership. You do not understand the left if you do not understand the left's definition of capitalism is explicitly and exclusively private property ownership. No, not personal property. Personal property is different than private property. You have to be very specific about this because the left uses this to trick you. They say, we don't want to take your stuff. We don't want to take your personal property. And that's true, but your personal property is different than private property because private property represents bourgeois property that you can use to create significant personalized wealth that sets you at a hierarchy with other people. That is the capitalist, the property owner, versus the oppressed, the proletariat, the non-property owner. Examples of bourgeois property include home ownership, land ownership, apartment rental ownership that you rent out as a landlord. This is why they hate landlords. This is where squatters' rights comes from. Intellectual property ownership would not exist. Private business ownership would not exist under the left. And the most scary part of all is the left believes that parental rights are a form of property ownership because you're passing generational wealth from parent to child based on kinship or biological status. And so therefore, they want to abolish all parental rights, which is where all the attacks on parental rights in public schools come from. That is the definition of private property ownership. Personal property, which they are telling the truth, they don't want to take your personal property, are things like your toothbrush or your cell phone or your computer or your car or your pets or your books or things like that. These might be things that you like, but they're not usually going to allow you to accumulate mass quantities of wealth that is separate, that separates you from other people, and that is what they're concerned about. So it is very important that you know the difference between private property and personal property, because the left uses this to trick people all the time. No, we don't. You don't understand. We don't want to take your personal property. We just want to take the bourgeois property. That means your ability to own a home, land, intellectual property, apartment rentals, Airbnbs, private business, and it means parental rights over your kids. And this is why we harp on the left's definition of capitalism over and over and over and over and over again, because they mean very specific things. And if you do not understand this, and this is based on me watching over 5,000 hours of their training over the past 5 years, I have watched more far left training than any other person in the country that I know of. And if someone wants to give me a name and say they've watched more than you tell me who that fucking is, because I want to talk to them, because I've never found anyone who has seen as much of this content as I have, and I have looked. These things matter. Definitions matter. And it doesn't fucking matter if you agree with their definition or not, because they are in their own subculture, they speak their own language, and they're going to give things whatever fucking definition they want, and then they are going to behave in accordance with that belief. They're not going to behave in accordance with your belief. They're going to behave in accordance with the belief they have about what the words mean and the implications of those words. So on this channel, we study them, we study their language, and I'm sorry, unless you know basic 101 level information about the left, you ain't coming in here and teaching me nothing. The criticism I get is that I shut down anyone who disagrees with me. I don't. There are people who've been in this community for years that know all of this information that I just explained to you. And no, bro, you don't get it. You don't get it because you're still not fucking listening, and you would never have protected me because I'm not going around you because I don't know who the fuck you are. You have people who have been in this community for years, like Ninja Artist, W's. Thank you for the gifted channel membership. She's been around a long time. Sheikah Lago, W's, good sir. Thank you for the gifted channel membership. You have people who've been doing this with me the entire time I've been doing it. Those people, like Mizakan, like Reagan, like Bot, like Master Shake, even though he's an asshole about it sometimes, like those people can give me advice about what the left means. I have no problem taking advice from people who know what the fuck they are talking about. The reality is, though, the vast majority of time people come onto my channel and they try to teach me something about the left. They don't know what the fuck they're talking about because all they have listened to and all they have been exposed to are conservative bullshit con artist narratives that are not real. Now, it is not their fault that they've been lied to by the people that they trust to inform them. Sarah with an H. Yo. 10 gifted channel memberships, Sarah. W's to you, my dear. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, Sarah. Legend. Fucking legend. If you have been lied to by conservative media, let me ask the chat. One in the chat if you feel that you have been lied to by conservative media about the left. 2 in the chat if you haven't gotten that feeling yet. 1 in the chat if you feel like you have been lied to by conservative media about the press. 2 in the chat if you don't think that they've lied to you. You don't feel like that yet. Maybe there are some 2s. I don't know, but you're going to be able to see on the screens the ones, okay? If you are one of those people that's new here and you think I'm scary because I yell at people, what I need you to understand is I need to get in your head and basically smack you in the face with the fact that you have been lied to by your own media. You think I want to deal with this bullshit? The worst thing that I have to deal with, the most impactful thing, even my dog's upset about it, the most impactful thing that I have to deal with on a daily basis is the brainwashing that happens in conservative media out to their audiences. Because they are lying to the public. They are misinforming the public. They may be doing it out of ignorance. They may be doing it out of a willful desire to mislead you so they can continue to make money off of you. But when you only look at primary sources about the left, literally, when you only look at what they're doing in person, when you only look at their trainings, when you only read their propaganda, and you block out all of the conservative media bullshit, you see what is happening in the real world. All media lies to you, bro. All media lies to you. Be fucking smarter than that. She scares because she cares. I need to scare you into understanding that you need to unlearn every single fucking thing you think you know. And it took me years to figure this out, by the way. It took me years of studying the left to figure out how much conservative media was lying to you and how much they have misinformed fucking everyone. And I am very sorry that happened. If you have been lied to by them, it is not your fault you were lied to by people that you trusted to inform you. But now that you have some sense that, listen, I had to do this with the left, okay? I was the Democrat that left the left, the knitting Democrat that left the left, whatever. I had to do this with my own side. It doesn't happen overnight. It took me months to go through the cognitive dissonance of understanding that my own side was using the media to lie to me. This happens on the left and it happens on the right. And no, conservatives, it's not okay that you do it because the left does it, so we have to lie to our audiences too. No. It is not fucking acceptable to put yourself in a position of being responsible for informing the public what is going on, and you lie to them over and over and over again. And not only do you lie to them, there is a mountain of direct evidence to disprove every single thing you are saying to them, and it is given to you over and over and over again, and then you block and smear and defame the people delivering you the evidence that contradicts the narrative that you want to sell your audience for money. I don't need to hide any of my information. All of my sources are publicly available. Anyone can go and look at exactly the same information I can, and most of the time they can do it for free. That's why I get so much support on this channel. You know, apparently there was a Twitter space last night. Did everyone get wind of this? Apparently there was a Twitter space last night in which some psychotic woman from Portland who pretends to be a journalist, and she's friends with that blonde whore that banged every influencer down at the ICE facility. What's her name? Right Side Rebel or whatever. She's friends with the blonde whore that fucked all the influencers before Enrique Tarrio finally came up after every other man had fucked that whore and said, "Oh, I want to marry you, darling," or some such shit. Can you imagine what a cuck Enrique Tarrio is to literally get last in line to the girl who had fucked everyone and basically show up with roses and sweep her off her feet? Like, gotta be real desperate there, Enrique. But like, okay, whatever. Back to this. So the blonde whore's friends held a Twitter space last night about me and other people they don't like, and they called me a Jew, and they said I support Israel. And I was like, okay, yeah, okay, yeah, you guys are definitely hinged into reality over there. You think I'm a Jew and I support Israel? Okay. But then, and again, I wasn't even paying attention to any of this because I had a stream with Jennifer last night, and then Victor wanted to spend some quality time together. Let's just say that after my stream last night, Victor wanted to spend some quality time together. So I sure as shit wasn't paying any attention to what was going on Twitter. Okay? And apparently in this space, because other people listened into it, the argument in this space was she can't possibly have this many supporters. She can't possibly have this many supporters. She must be running all these accounts. Guys, did you know that you're all me, apparently? I'm all you, you're all me. I hear Fannie and Freddie is about to go public. If it had been held hostage all of this time so that people would actually not own anything and be happy, would it flip the script on the socialist push? No, because that's a completely different thing. You're talking about WEF, globalist economic markets. It's not the same thing at all to what the far left is doing. So no, those are two different things. The WEF and all that globalist economic stuff is not the same as the far left in America. Two completely different concepts. Yeah, apparently you guys are all paid protesters. They're literally accusing you guys of not, well, yeah, I mean, apparently I'm the one sending in all the channel memberships. I've gotten 17 channel memberships so far today. I haven't even been asking. Apparently I'm the one sending in the super chats. Apparently I'm the one, because here is their argument. They say, we've looked at some of the accounts supporting her, and they only share her stuff. I'm going to say that again. These idiots see you guys on Twitter, which, by the way, let me just ask you this, and you can see my hands. I'm not typing anything into the chat. One in the chat, if you are literally only on Twitter to support my work and you hate Twitter otherwise and you don't even want to be there, but you are suffering for the community because you created a Twitter account just to support my work. One in the chat if that's true. Two in the chat if you do other stuff on Twitter too. Three in the chat if you're not on Twitter at all. Retards. You want to know why? Grillis, thank you so much for the super sticker. I really appreciate you, bro. Idiots. Do you want to know why there are so many accounts on Twitter that you guys see that are literally just sharing my stuff? Because there are dozens and dozens of people just in the chat, like literally right now, who are only on Twitter to support me. They don't want to be on Twitter. They are on Twitter because they understand that the only way to get conservative retards to actually cover something is to make it go viral on Twitter, which has now become damn near impossible. And honestly, my stuff is going way more viral on Instagram and Facebook now than it is on Twitter. Like, I am shocked. I'm actually shocked at the amount of views I'm getting on Instagram and Facebook. Like, I will get 700,000 views on Instagram on a video that only gets 7,000 views on X. Like, literally. It is mind-blowing how much better it is. So it's like the only reason for us to even be on Twitter is to try to make something go viral accidentally so that conservative media actually covers the truth for once in their fucking lives. That is why, retards, you see accounts on Twitter that literally only share my content. Asking me the same fucking question over and over and over again is not going to get me to answer it. This is about getting arrested in different roles in protests. You can go look it up. It's not relevant to what we're doing right now. So, listen. The reality is that this stream is happening today because we almost didn't hit our channel membership goal yesterday, and the channel membership goal is how I am able to fund this. For people who think I'm making all the donations, no. I get thousands of channel members and support from people every single month through super chats, through channel memberships, through Substack subscriptions, through Rumble memberships, through X subscriptions, content, all that shit. From selling books. Like, Karlyn can't possibly be doing this with other people. She has to be doing it all herself. What a fucking cope. Because you retards are jealous that I built something that you can't build. No, not right now. Okay, let me spell it out to you, bro. If you want to ask me a question that is completely irrelevant to what I'm talking about, send in some money. Do it in the form of a super chat. That's what we're going to do. No, we're reading a different one. We already read that one. I think we already read that one, honestly. Anyway, we are here today because we have to finish the second half of our Antifa propaganda from yesterday. And basically we had a little off day yesterday. We were way off on the channel membership goal. And again, guys, like, the deal is with this stuff, I will show up for you when you show up for me. The way that I am able to maintain the amount of streaming and free education that I provide the public and free intelligence, answering all your questions that are related to the topic and stuff like that. The way I'm able to do all this stuff is with super chats and channel memberships and Substack subscriptions and stuff like that. I am the only person covering this topic that is completely independently funded. I do not take any political money. I do not work with any political organization. You will never get a bullshit narrative from me. I literally just show up and I monitor all the different far left sources and I say, here's what they're talking about, here's what they're doing, here's what they're saying inside their meetings, and then I show you the fucking video. That's it. You can decide for yourself what you think about it. But what you are doing on this channel is you are seeing directly into the propaganda of the far left. You're seeing directly into their training. You're seeing directly into their organizing calls. Yesterday, we were reading some new Antifa propaganda that came out. And unfortunately, we didn't hit the channel membership goal in time, but we did hit it later in the day. And so the deal is, you guys show up for me. I'm showing up for you. So we are finishing the stream that we started yesterday. So I appreciate every single person. That's why we're live a little bit early today. I appreciate every single person who joined and, sent channel memberships and super chats and all that stuff. You guys are the fucking best. I know the community always shows up for me and I appreciate it. It's okay to have an off day. It's okay to have an off day. So what we are going to be doing is reading this zine, not this one, Anarchists in the Movement Against Police and White Supremacy. Yesterday, we read this one. So if you want to watch their recounting of the hunger strike in New Jersey, you can find that on the video yesterday. We went through it. We broke it down. We thought about what that meant, stuff like that. So you can find that one from part 1 of this stream. And today we are reading a zine that they just published. And this is a little bit more of like their historical retrospective, but this is the context that's important to understand because they're going to be talking about all of the different protest anarchist movements against the police. And when the left says the police, they also mean ICE. They believe ICE and the police are the same thing. So you always have to keep that in mind. Anytime they're saying the police, they're saying ICE. Anytime they're saying ICE, they're saying the police. Yo, you know what? Listen, Right to Resist, I got to give you a dub. It's not often that people come into the chat and then spam me with the same question. And then I say, I'm not answering that right now. And if you want me to answer it, send me some money. It's not often that people who do that actually join the channel. So welcome to the cult, Right to Resist. Welcome to the cult. You're never leaving. You're never going to see the world the same way again. I appreciate the chutzpah on your part. So that's a big dub. Okay, my understanding of the red, yellow, green signifiers at a protest, but the thing of it is I don't know if this is different among different far left groups. My understanding is they are designations for people who are willing to get involved in like a certain type of interaction with the cops. So I believe, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's been a minute since I heard about this. I believe that red is like a designation for you are willing to get arrested, and they actually train you to get arrested. No. Okay. What is the left's definition of capitalism? Bro, I'm going to be very honest. You just joined the channel. I want to like you. I really do. You're not going to come in here and teach us stuff until we know you know what you're talking about. So I don't need to Google your name. I've had a lot of people come through here over the years saying the same thing. What is the left's definition of capitalism? Explain it. I just explained it earlier. You should have been listening. Okay, so you weren't really listening when I gave the clear explanation earlier because you're just guessing. Okay, so what I'm going to tell you is welcome to the channel. We don't have anything to learn from you right now. When you are new on the channel, your job is to listen, and it is to learn, and it is to ask questions. And I promise you, every single person that ignores this advice does not last long here. And by the way, it's not just me who's gatekeeping the community. It's other people in the chat who don't want that shit here. This is a fascist channel. You do not have free fucking speech in my chat. Your speech is allowed within the parameters that I set. I am at the top of the hierarchy. You are at the bottom of the hierarchy. Okay? But then that's fine. But what we need you to do is formulate things in the form of questions, okay? I'm not saying I'm not willing to get to know you, but like you've got to formulate things in the form of questions, and you have to prove you're actually here for the right reasons. This is an exclusive community. It's not an inclusive community. We are exclusive here. Not everyone is allowed. We gatekeep the fuck out of this chat because we have to keep it a high IQ place. Anyway, so what we're going to be reading today is basically, this is like a historical retrospective for them. So it's going to give you the context of like why they're doing what they're doing today in the context of like the entire history of this type of protest against the police and white supremacy. Does everyone understand why the police are a white supremacist institution for the left? Pop quiz in the chat. Does everyone understand? Can you explain to me why they say the police are a white supremacist institution? See, now you're breaking the second rule of the chat, dude. I have 2 rules in the chat. Number 1, don't be a dick. Number 2, no whining. Now you guys don't like me. I don't give a fuck about your feelings, bro. Literally. No fucking whining. Yeah, you don't like me. Like, you think I want to hear that shit? I'm teaching about important topics and you're fucking crying in the chat. They're saying the police are a white supremacist institution because the police are the descendants of slave catchers. And we've heard them saying this over and over and over again at the New Jersey ICE facility. Every single time you guys hear the protesters yell, slave catchers, slave catchers, slave catchers, or talking about the police being from the slave catchers, what they're saying is the modern day police were created when the evil capitalist property owners, the slave owners, owned the property of human beings and then paid the slave catchers to go chase the slaves down when they ran away or escaped. So the role of the slave catcher was to collect the property or protect the property of the capitalist property owner. They believe today's modern day police has evolved from that institution. When they are saying the police are white supremacists, they don't mean the police hate black people. What they mean is a reference to systemic racism or what was created by the institution of property ownership known as slavery in America. That is why they're calling it racist, because it comes from slavery, slavery being an example of capitalism. The system that upholds racism is capitalism. The system is capitalism, okay? They believe that that is where slavery comes from. Capitalism created slavery. Slavery created all racial disparities and systemic racism. That is what they're talking about. That is why we say whiteness means capitalism. When the left uses the term whiteness, it is not a reference to skin color. It is a reference to property ownership. It is a reference to the property owning capitalist class. That is why Larry Elder was the black face of white supremacy in the Los Angeles Times, because we have Cheryl Harris, the woman who wrote the paper, Whiteness as Property, giving a speech at UCLA Law School in 2014 on video saying black people can be white too. Whiteness is not about skin color. Capitalism and whiteness are inherently linked. We have all this on video. They are explicit about what they mean. Conservative influencers still haven't figured this out, by the way. Alex Jones still hasn't figured this out, by the way. But we did, because we listen to them all the time. So, we're going to be reading this document. And then, if we have time, Right to Resist just got put in a little timeout because he's talking way too much. Right to Resist, you're in a timeout because I need you to shut the fuck up and listen. We are going to be doing this paper first, and then if we have time, we are going to watch that video from the Denver Communists with Candace Tucker and MTG on the MTG on the thumbnail, because I want to hear what the Denver Communists have to say about that. That's like a bonus part of the episode, though. Guys, we have until 5:30. At 5:30 tonight, we will be entering into Spy Stream. If you have never been to a Spy Stream before, Spy Stream is a supporter exclusive event. So you have to be a YouTube channel member, Substack supporter, Locals, Patreon, X subscriber. Wherever you are a supporter, you can find the link. This is a journey into a live far left discussion. We are flies on the wall, listening to the left talk in real time about what they are doing. This is why I ask for channel membership donations as a form of support. This is why I have a channel membership goal every day, because when we are doing Spy Stream, I want as many channel members as possible. I want as many of you to have access to this resource as possible, but we have learned over the years that it is just safer and better to do Spy Stream as a supporter exclusive, because it cuts down on just a lot of problems and getting caught and stuff like that. 7 Lilies, thank you so much for the 5 gifted channel memberships. W's to you. We give W's when people give channel memberships, because they're not only supporting my work, they're also giving more people access to Spy Stream resources. If you are on my YouTube channel, if you just became a member, where you find the link to Spy Stream, I'm going to show you. You go to my YouTube channel homepage, you click on the post tab, and underneath the post tab, when you are a channel member, I'm not a channel member under this account, the very first post that you will see is the link to tonight's Spy Stream. It is not a YouTube member stream, because I have to make it available to other people too. But you will find the link to the video in the post tab in the community. If you are on the Substack, you will find it on the Substack. If you're on X, Locals, or Patreon, you will find it there. Rumble, it will just pop up for you over there, so don't fucking worry about it. And so that is how we're doing Spy Stream later tonight. We are going inside a live queer feminist discussion starting around 5:30 p.m. tonight. So make sure you join the channel, or maybe you'll get lucky enough to get a channel membership. We've already got 23 so far today. So awesome job, guys. I really appreciate it. Lisa Old Granny, thank you so much for the gifted channel membership. Channel membership gifting is a way to support the community and me all at once. Exactly. It's like a twofer. It's a 2-for-1 deal. And guys, you can give Substack subscriptions. If you don't want to give Google your money, you can gift subscriptions over on my Substack if you want to. You can just gift them to me, or you can give them out to your friends and family. If you want to do that, you get all the same benefits over there, and actually a couple extras that you don't get on YouTube, because there's like there's a podcast, stuff like that I really need to update, but you can still get back episodes and stuff. So yeah, giving channel memberships is like a twofer. Yeah, we're basically peeping Toms. Exactly. So guys, let's dig in. Let's get to work. We have about almost 2 hours, like an hour 45 to get through this stuff. I think we can do it. As we make our way through the document, I would prefer you didn't. I would prefer you didn't. Can you please just give through one of the donation mechanisms? I appreciate that. Membership. Okay, thanks so much, Mike. I will count that as a membership. Thank you. Thank you. Guys, as we are making our way through this document, if you have questions about what they are saying, please do ask them in the chat. I will try to answer all questions, and let's just get up our handy dandy reader here. Not that one, that one. And let's get this party started.
Anarchists in the movement against police and white supremacy. From the Los Angeles riots to the George Floyd uprising. To observe the 5-year anniversary of the burning of the 3rd Precinct at the beginning of the George Floyd revolt, we have prepared a timeline tracing the trajectory of anarchist contributions to uprisings against the police from the Rodney King riots of 1992 to the uprising in Minneapolis in 2020. This story has never been told in...
So they are telling you, Antifa is basically telling you, here are all the riots that we have been involved with for the past 30 years, something like that. Over 30 years. Had to do math in my head there. Antifa is telling you, here are all the riots that we have been involved in since 1992. People think that Antifa just showed up with Donald Trump. Andy No actually thinks that, by the way. Andy No's a retard, but whatever. People think Antifa just showed up with Donald Trump. No. They've been around a long ass time. They've been around since like the modern day version of Antifa started developing in Minneapolis in 1986. So they're telling you, here is our history. And yeah, Master Shake is right about this. They're also making mythology, and I do agree with that. They are telling their version of events, like winners write the history books and all that good stuff. But I don't think they're just like, they're not completely fabricating things. They're just taking like a nugget of truth and then building bullshit on top of it. But like, it's not like they weren't there. It's not like they weren't involved. It's not a complete lie. It's just their kind of distorted, mythic version of the truth. And you do have to keep that in mind, guys. This is propaganda. We are reading propaganda. This is their version of events, but they believe this is true regardless of whether or not it's a little hyperbolic.
This story has never been told in full. We hope this cursory effort will help participants in tomorrow's movements to understand the history that they are part of. Needless to say, this is just one of many ways to tell this story. Countless historical threads converge in the George Floyd uprising. We could trace some of them back to the hip-hop underground, others to gang truce mediation efforts, others to the Black Panthers.
Yeah,
But
good
this
point.
is one
Black
of them.
Panthers.
Demonstrators in May 2020. Today, 5 years after the uprising of 2020, it is easy to forget all the victories that the movement against police and white supremacy has won since the turn of the century. 2 decades ago, it was difficult to see how to expand conversation about police violence. No one could have imagined that in 2021, even after a bipartisan campaign against a proposal, 44% of voters in a major metropolitan area would vote to abolish the police. 2 decades ago, it was unthinkable that...
I want to be very clear about this. The left will never, ever, 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 ever give up on the goal of abolishing the police. Police abolition is one of the top priorities of far left activism. When they say the police, they also mean ICE. That is why they're calling to abolish ICE. They want to abolish ICE for the same reason they want to abolish the police. ICE are the protectors of capitalism. The police are the protectors of capitalism. Capitalism is defined as private property ownership. What do you need to have private property? A border. ICE, DHS are the protectors of the border. They are protectors of private property, the protectors of capitalism. The police are the descendants of slave catchers. They protect the property class, the ruling class, the capitalist class. Therefore, police are the managers of private property, the protectors of property. The left will never give up on this idea of abolishing the police, and that's why they want to abolish ICE and DHS at the same time, because they think they're the same thing, okay? So, I just want to make sure people understand that. I think a lot of conservatives are very confused about this. I remember seeing Corey DeAngelis in an interview with Moms for Liberty where he was very confused. Like, I thought they gave up on abolishing the police. Never gonna fucking happen. It's never going to happen. They do not believe the police can be reformed. They believe that in order to overthrow capitalism, abolish private property, they need to abolish the protectors of that private property. That is what the anti-ICE protests are about. That's it. They're not about the food conditions of detainees. They're not about kidnapping innocent families and ripping them apart and all this stuff. It is only and exclusively about abolishing the institutions that they believe are protecting the capitalist class. That is what the protests are about. That is what the BLM protests were about when they were saying abolish the police. That is what the anti-ICE protests are about now, regardless of what they say. That is the root cause of everything. What then? They overthrow the government and implement communism. That's what then. You're welcome.
2 decades ago, it was unthinkable that tens of thousands of people would embrace direct action and take up black bloc tactics. If we have lost some of this ground thanks to the reactionary administration of Joe Biden and the fascist government of Donald Trump, this does not mean that the struggles of the past 2 decades were for naught. It should only serve to remind us that in a pitched conflict, we cannot rest on our laurels.
No, Antifa does not come from the 70s. You guys have got to get over the fucking Weather Underground. That was in the 70s. This is the 2020s, guys. Antifa comes from the Skinheads Against Racial Prejudice movement that was in Minnesota, Minneapolis in 1986. The Skinheads Against Racial Prejudice, the Sharps, turned into the Anti-Racist Action Network, a nationwide group of non-hierarchical, decentralized cells that were dressing up in black bloc and doing direct action that is exactly the same thing that Antifa does today. That is the origin of Antifa in America. It is a uniquely American phenomenon that developed in America. That's not to say there's not Antifa overseas. Of course there are. But what we are dealing with in America developed in America. The kernel of this was in America, and they might mimic tactics of other Antifa overseas, and they certainly share information with them and all that. But this is why we only study the left in America, because what we are dealing with, and also when you add in queer Marxism on top of this, it's all a uniquely American development that needs to be studied as that single kind of like perspective.
It should only serve to remind us that in a pitched conflict, we cannot rest on our laurels. We must constantly be fighting.
No, it does not. It does not. It does not. Workers do not include the police. They do not believe the police unions are real unions. We say we have them on video saying this explicitly. They do not believe the police unions are real unions. They believe the police are the protectors of capitalism. This is why they call. Haven't you heard them at the ICE protests calling black ICE officers class traitors? They believe that especially they believe that all black people are rightfully proletarian. All black people should act like they're oppressed. They get very pissed off when black people own businesses because it makes them capitalist. That's why Larry Elder's the black face of white supremacy. They've been calling all these black and brown ICE agents class traitors at the protest. You can hear them say it directly because the police, ICE, are the protectors of capitalism. They do not include the working. They are not included in the working class. They are not included in the proletariat. They are the people protecting the people who are doing the exploitation. You can laugh all you fucking want, but the reason you idiots are losing to the left is you don't fucking understand them at all. If you think this is funny, I think it's funny that they're gonna queer all your kids in school and there's nothing you can fucking do about it. So you get ready to have a they them for a grandchild, bro. You get ready to have a they them for a child or a grandchild because the left is gonna take your kids in school, and then you're not gonna find it so fucking funny anymore, will you?
It should only serve to remind us that in a pitched conflict,
hang on. Did we get some gifted channel? I just want to make sure I acknowledge everybody. Ninja Artist. W's to you. Thank you so much for the gifted channel membership.
It should only serve to remind us that in a pitched conflict, we cannot rest on our laurels. We must constantly be fighting to build the world we want to live in. Until the Ferguson Rebellion, very little was known about
Everything in
how
Europe
many
is a
people
little
police
different, yeah.
kill in the United States.
Yeah. Stuff in Europe is different. Stuff in Europe is actually more extreme than the US. I'm not saying Europe isn't worth studying Antifa. I'm just saying I'm not going to do it because I'm an American. Someone in Europe should do what I'm doing though for Europe. That would actually be fucking awesome. It would be awesome to have people on the ground in Europe, honestly. Someone in Canada should study it. Someone in Australia, New Zealand should study it. I just have to and Africa, forget the fuck off shit in Africa. Africa, if you hear like when they're talking about white people in Africa, they don't mean capitalism. They actually mean white people. So you do have to like understand these nuances that like I know it can be confusing when you guys hear insane people in South Africa calling to kill all white people. They do actually mean white people, but they are in Africa. It is a completely different place. It is a completely different culture. It is not the same thing as going on in America. So I'm not saying you shouldn't concern yourself with it. I'm not saying it's not worthy of coverage. I'm just saying that you have to be able to understand we are studying America and what they say and do in America. That is the exclusive purview of what we are doing here.
Police departments and federal agencies did not release the statistics. The only ones who were really speaking about the issue were those whose communities were immediately impacted by police violence, and those who had a systematic analysis of the institution of policing. Today, by contrast, news outlets like the New York Times freely publish statistics about police murders. Why was the fight against racist police murders able to produce the most powerful social upheaval in living memory? The movement that eventually led to the George Floyd uprising got off the ground in the first place because, starting with the protest against the murder of Oscar Grant in 2009,
See, the George Floyd protest didn't start with George Floyd. They started with this other guy in 2009. 2009. Who was president in 2009? Can someone remind me who was president in 2009? Can someone please remind who it eludes me who was president of the United States in 2009? Was that Obama? Was Obama president in 2009? Obama was president in 2009? That are you telling me that the origin of the BLM protests in America started under Obama? Are you telling me that they were doing this shit under Obama? Wow. Wow. It's almost as if they didn't support Obama. And it's almost as if they don't like him and they were always doing leftist activism under Democrat presidents just as much as they've done under Trump. Wow.
The movement that eventually led to the George Floyd uprising got off the ground in the first place because, starting with the protest against the murder of Oscar Grant in 2009, the participants were able to connect the following crucial elements: an abolitionist analysis that explained why the murders were occurring more persuasively than any liberal or conservative narrative, a set of reproducible tactics that were immediately associated with that analysis. So
they don't like liberal or conservative narrative. You don't say. Guys, this is Antifa. This is not liberals. This is not Democrats. This is not progressives. They hate liberals just as much as they hate conservatives, and they're saying this in their own documents.
An abolitionist analysis that explained why the murders were occurring more persuasively than any liberal or conservative narrative, a set of reproducible tactics that were immediately associated with that analysis, so people could easily...
No, it is not about Trump specifically to them. It is because they believe the United States government and the Constitution was grounded in capitalism. Understand this. There is only one place for the left to end up at when you understand their language. Their ultimate goal is the abolition of the United States. Their goal is to abolish the Constitution, abolish all borders around the country, borders around the states, no borders anywhere, and to abolish the United States government because they believe the Constitution is a capitalist document written to uphold capitalism, and therefore the United States government was built on top of capitalism to uphold and preserve capitalism, and therefore the only way to abolish capitalism is to abolish the country. That is the goal. That is the goal of the BLM protests. That is the goal of any anti-police action. That is the goal of the ICE protests. That is the goal of every single thing that they are doing. When you understand their language, you always understand how it extrapolates back to that. The only way they can abolish capitalism, as they define it, is to abolish the government, abolish the Constitution, and abolish all borders up to and including the borders around your house. That is the goal.
A set of reproducible tactics that were immediately associated with that analysis, so people could easily take action if they found it convincing. Concrete points of intervention, including specific times, places, participants, and targets. Other movements have not been able to establish this connection between analysis, action, and context, and have subsequently remained stunted. If we want to mobilize an effective resistance to the aspiring autocrats who hold power today, or to industrially produce climate change or other threats, we have to learn from the George Floyd uprising. It was also crucial that the movement against police and white supremacy centered those who have the least cause to preserve the existing order. This should not be lost on middle-class people who hope that others will join them in resisting the Trump regime. In order to involve enough people to succeed, any movement against Trump will have to address the material needs of the oppressed, giving them a stake in the fight. If we don't want to live under autocracy, there is no way around it. We have to organize against all forms of oppression.
The left believes that all oppression is created by capitalism because capitalism creates disparities that creates a hierarchy. When you have a hierarchy, you have some people who have more access to money and power than other people. Those people are the capitalist, the bourgeois, the property owner, the people who have less power, the exploited, the oppressed, the proletariat, okay? That is what we're talking about. When they say fighting against all forms of oppression, they are saying all of the hierarchies that capitalism has created, that create all the oppression. This is what they believe, not what I believe. They believe that all oppression is created by capitalism. If you get rid of capitalism, you get rid of oppression.
If we don't want to live under autocracy, there is no way around it. We have to organize against all forms of oppression. Graffiti on the gas pump at the Burnt Cutie in Ferguson in August 2014, place it in a context of 8 decades of uprisings.
Look at that.
Prehistory, from the Los Angeles riots to the murder of Oscar Grant. Rioting in response to police murder is as American as apple pie. The previous generation was deeply impacted by the riots in Watts in 1965 and in Detroit in 1967, among others. To trace the trajectory of contemporary anarchist involvement in movements against the police, however, will start in 1991. Los Angeles, March 3rd, 1991.
I don't have to read it.
On the shoulder of the freeway, police are beating a man. Because we are in the U.S., and because the man is black, we will know that this is a routine event, an ordinary brutality, part of the very fabric of everyday life for non-whites. But something is exceptional this time.
When they're saying non-whites, they mean the oppressed proletarian. That's not a. You need to learn. I'm saying this for new people. You need to learn how to code switch in your head. The police oppress non-capitalists. The police are the protectors of the capitalist class. The capitalist class is labeled white. The property class is labeled black. That's not a reference to skin color. It's just what the class is named. The left believes. They made all this shit up. I'm telling you what they believe, okay? So when they're saying non-whites, they're not saying people who don't have white skin. They are saying non-capitalists, non-property owners, because the police are the protectors of the capitalists. Therefore, the police oppress the non-property owners.
But something is exceptional this time. There is an observer, as there often is, but the observer holds his hands in inhuman witness, a little device for producing images which are accepted as identical with the real. The images grainy, shaking with the traces of the body behind them, and frame this event. Defamiliarize it. Make it appear in all its awfulness as both unimaginable singularity and example of a broader category of everyday violence. The recorded beating of Rodney King marks, as many have noted, the beginning of one of the most significant episodes of U.S. history. After images of the L.A. riots, Los Angeles, 1992, April 1992. In Los Angeles in April 1992, a jury acquitted the police officers who had beaten Rodney King, setting off a citywide uprising. In that largely pre-digital era, when news traveled somewhat more slowly, narratives about those events reached many young people through music, including songs by Dr. Dre, Sublime, and other Los Angeles locals. The riots exerted a formative influence on an entire generation. Satellite actions took place from San Diego.
You know a book I want to write one day? It's not really so much a book I want to write as a book. Maybe actually this could be a group project. I just thought of this. I want to put together, okay, so here is a good purpose for us to know the left's definition of capitalism. Because the left believes that intellectual property is a form of capitalism, they do not believe in copyright. So one of the reasons I can get away with just reading all of this material on streams like verbatim is because Antifa does not believe in copyright. They don't believe in intellectual property. All of this is licensed for free use on the internet, and that's it actually says this on their website. Like, this is a no copyright thing. They do not have copyright. They say this explicitly. So what I want to do is I want to publish an anthology of the most impactful Antifa propaganda over like maybe the last, 30, 40 years, something like that. And I want to put it in an anthology, like as a timeline to use as like a study guide for people who want to get into this stuff, but they don't really know where to start because there's just a huge fuck off amount of information. And I want to put together what I think are like, here are the most impactful pieces of Antifa literature over the past like 30 years and actually publish that in an anthology that we can use. It's like use as like a counter-revolutionary book club or as like a thing or something like that. One in the chat if you guys think that would be a helpful thing for me to do. Two in the chat if you think that's a dumb idea. It's on the list of 87,000 things that I have to do at any given time.
Satellite actions took place from San Diego and San Francisco to Las Vegas and Atlanta. In 1996, smaller scale, rioting took place in St. Petersburg in response to the police murdering an 18-year-old black man named Tyron Lewis. Today, when social media has been saturated with footage of police senselessly beating and murdering people, especially black and indigenous men, it could seem almost quaint that footage of the beating of Rodney King inspired such uproar. The democratization of video technology has contributed not only to outbreaks of unrest like the LA riots and the George Floyd revolt, but also to desensitizing and accustoming people to racist police violence. Los Angeles, 1992. The 1990s. In the late 1980s and early 1990s, the do-it-yourself
Anti-Racist Action Network. What was I just... This is literally... They're about to tell you about the origin of Antifa, guys. They are literally going to say to you what I taught you earlier, that this stuff started in the late 80s, in 1986 in Minneapolis, with a group that was called the Skinheads Against Racial Prejudice that evolved into the Anti-Racist Action Network that was modeled on Europe's anti-fascist action. They're telling you where modern day Antifa comes from, right here.
In the late 1980s and early 1990s, the do-it-yourself punk underground helped contribute to a renaissance of anarchism around the world. One of the networks that emerged in the United States was Anti-Racist Action, modeled on Europe's anti-fascist action, but adjusted to account for how central racial oppression has always been to capitalism in North America.
See, what they're saying is, yes, we took inspiration from Antifa in Europe, but they're telling you flat out, this is a uniquely American thing because the institution of property ownership known as slavery, they believe, was unique to America. That is why they're saying Racism is central in oppression and has always been to capitalism in North America because this is a uniquely evolved, hyper-American phenomenon. So it takes inspiration from Antifa in Europe. It is not the same thing because of how central they believe capitalism's institution of racism is to capitalism in America today. Does everyone understand? 1 in the chat if you understand what I just said. 2 in the chat if you're confused. Let me know.
One of the networks that emerged in the United States was Anti-Racist Action, modeled on Europe's anti-fascist action, but adjusted to account for...
No, they are not for white advocacy. They don't give a fuck about skin color. Skinheads were not just pro-white. So you need to go back and study some history on that one. So no. Chicken Spawn put a link in the chat for the Socialism Saturday that we did on the skinheads against racial prejudice. You should go back and watch that episode so you can hear directly from them. No, they were not pro-white advocates. Guys, the right are the only people who care about skin color. The right is fucking obsessed with skin color. The left doesn't care about skin color. They are not saying skin color when they are saying these things. They are talking about different classes. They are talking about the working class versus the oppressor boss class. That is always what they're talking about. They're talking about systems. They're not talking about individuals.
One of the networks that emerged in the United States was Anti-Racist Action, modeled on Europe's anti-fascist action, but adjusted to account for how central racial oppression has always been to capitalism in North America. The environmental movement also contributed to the reemergence of anarchism, thanks to Earth First and the Earth and Animal Liberation movements,
is crazy.
a powerful current of direct action organizing spread in ecological circles. It was only later that the shifts heralded by Al Gore's An Inconvenient Truth contributed to professionalizing and taming them. At the turn of the century, green anarchist publications like Disorderly Conduct, Anarchy Magazine, and Do or Die helped to introduce insurrectionary anarchism to North America, promoting the idea that anarchists should look for opportunities to fight.
We should look for back issues of this. I'm going to take a screenshot of this. We should look for back issues of these magazines, and we should collect them. I have, for people who don't know, I'm starting to amass a not insignificant amount of like leftist historical material, and I'm always looking for like, if you go into like an old book, like a bookstore, like a leftist bookstore, like an old bookstore where they sell like used books, and you ever see a lot of like communism magazines, please buy them for me and send them to me, and I will reimburse you. I'm not even kidding about that. And so because I'm starting to collect their old magazines and their old periodicals and stuff like that, and my goal is to like archive this stuff like for history, essentially.
Promoting the idea that anarchists should look for opportunities to fight directly against their oppressors alongside other rebellious elements of the oppressed. Green anarchists who cut their teeth using militant tactics in forest defense campaigns converged alongside
this is all conservative bullshit talking points. Although the philosophy, you can talk about the historical roots of the philosophy. We do not study the philosophy on this channel for a reason. Just because something was written 200 years ago by someone who is dead now does not mean it is influential in the far left ecosystem today. Okay? Some of it informs them, a lot of it does not. They denounce Stalin, they denounce Mao. This is why the conservative bullshit narrative around all the Stalinism and all the CCP stuff is like actual bullshit. They do entire presentations denouncing Stalin and Mao over and over and over and over and over again. They want nothing to fucking do with Stalin and Mao. They are more inspired by Lenin, Trotsky, the Russian Revolution, all that stuff. That is what they are trying to recreate in America. They are not neck deep in reading the Frankfurt School. Have you actually ever tried to read the fucking Frankfurt School? Because it is boring. They have their own ecosystem of propaganda that is writing stuff that they are reading today that is much more influential than any bullshit that came out of the Frankfurt School. That's just reality, guys. This is why you look at on the ground what propaganda they're distributing. What are they reading in their book clubs? What are they handing out at anarchist book fairs? I'm not interested in something that was written 100 fucking years ago that no one is reading now. I'm only interested in what they're actually reading and distributing now, because that is what is most influencing their ideas and their actions moving forward. Yeah, it's boring. So you get it. You get it.
Green anarchists who cut their teeth using militant tactics in forced defense campaigns converged alongside tens of thousands of other demonstrators in Seattle in November 1999 for the protests against the World Trade Organization summit. Some of them participated in the notorious Black Bloc on November 30th that drew considerable attention to that tactic. This helped to set the template for the next 2 decades of anarchist street action. April 2001. In Cincinnati, on April 7th, 2001, a white police officer murdered 19-year-old Timothy Thomas. Thomas was the 15th black man Cincinnati police had killed in 6 years. On April 9th,
Well, John, yes, they do that, but they're winning and you're losing. So, John, I'm going to play a helpful video just for you. Every time you have the desire to make a conservative retard comment in my chat, I need you to remember this highly instructional video. John, are you paying attention? I want to make sure you're paying attention.
You take your top lip and connect it to your bottom lip, you will shut the fuck up. Sometimes shutting the fuck up is the best thing you can do.
I don't care about your conservative retard opinion of what they're doing or your interpretation of it. I care that you understand that they are kicking your fucking ass, and no matter how much you insult them or own the libs in my chat to make yourself feel like a big man, when in fact you've done nothing to prevent this problem and your own side is facilitating them doing this, you can shut the fuck up and learn what they actually believe, or you can get the fuck out. But I don't want any conservative retard owning the libs so that you assholes feel better about being monumental fucking losers in this scenario. No, it won't, because they have completely different fucking beliefs and you are just making shit up like another conservative retard. Just because they don't share the same ideology as Stalin, that is still going to end in the same way. They have a completely different belief system, you stupid motherfucker. Okay, John, I gave you really good advice. I'm very sorry, John. It's you, not us. Just deported from the chat. Go away. Goodbye. People think I'm joking when I say sit the fuck down and shut up. People think I'm joking. They really do. They think I'm joking when I say we have an exclusive community, not a community of fucking retards who just want to own the libs. They think I'm joking until I deport their asses from the fucking channel for being too stupid to be here.
On April 9th, Thomas's mother joined other protesters at City Hall, where police chief and the mayor refused to apologize for the murder. A Cincinnati police officer pushes his knee into a person's back in Cincinnati on April 10th, 2001. Angered at these responses, the crowd proceeded to take over City Hall. Windows were smashed, the American flag was removed from the flagpole and turned upside down, and the mayor was forced to leave via the back door. Hundreds more protesters arrived at City Hall that night. As the crowd swelled to 1,000, they marched to the Central Police Station. Cincinnati's Black Rebellion exposes U.S. racial injustice. Anarchists from Cincinnati, some of whom were involved in anti-racist action, participated in the riots that took place over the following days. As the Black anarchist Lorenzo Camboa Irvin wrote, in Black people have a right to rebel. We can soon expect to see other such rebellions in various American cities, because similar contradictions exist. The task of Black radicals is not to call for new federal legislation, an FBI investigation, or a citizen review board. We must educate our people about the truth of the system and begin to build a mass resistance movement against racism and internal colonialism. This resistance should be...
Okay, PNW over on Rumble says, I know local Antifa groups, Emerald City, Rose City, Diamond City. Are there any other prominent ones outside of PNW? Here's the thing, guys. Conservatives think that if one group shows up in the news over and over and over and over and over again in conservative media, that means they are the only group. They also think it means they are the most prominent group. It also means they think they are the only impactful group. So conservatives truly believe, because they've been brainwashed by their retard media, that something does not exist if they haven't heard about it. And that if conservatives latch on to something like Rose City Antifa, and then they talk about it over and 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 over again, because Rose City Antifa is the only fucking Antifa group they've ever heard of. So then the audience assumes that's the most prominent and that's the biggest and that's the scariest. There are thousands of Antifa cells nationwide. They are not all called Antifa. Most of them do not have Antifa in the title. Most of them are called collectives or info shops or distros. That is what most of them are called. There are also other ones that don't follow any specific naming convention and just have names that they made up. They are in every state. They are in every city. Many cities have more than one because sometimes there are competing groups in larger cities, and that's just the way it goes. There are thousands of these groups. You should ask yourself why you have literally only ever heard of Rose City Antifa. Why is that the only Antifa group that you've ever heard of? Because it's the only one fucking covered in conservative media. That's why.
This resistance should be by any means necessary. Like the Los Angeles riots, the uprising in Cincinnati was a multi-ethnic revolt against institutional white supremacy. Yet some of the tensions that were to reemerge in Oakland, Ferguson, and Minneapolis were already evident. As one anarchist collective wrote in July 2001, wrestling with the questions facing non-Black participants, it's hard to claim to take leadership from the Black community when there's no one viewpoint predominant in that community, and symbolically confronting privileged space is not necessarily the same as supporting the struggle of the Black community. How essential was anarchist participation in the Cincinnati uprising? By the account of the anarchists who wrote about it, they played only a peripheral role. Nonetheless, the spread of anarchism and the uprising in Cincinnati took place in parallel, as if in response to the same unseen developments. The first half of 2001 was the high point of the movement against capitalist globalization. Only 5 months earlier, in November 2000, one of the only significant mobilizations in the Midwest had taken place in Cincinnati in response to the Transatlantic Business Dialogue Conference. After the momentum of the anti-capitalist movement stalled a few months later, anti-police uprisings also paused. A lone protester in the middle of Ray Street.
Do you notice how they're saying anti-police and anti-capitalist in the same sentence? This is not a coincidence, guys. After the momentum of the anti-capitalist movement stalled a few months later, the anti-police uprisings also paused. They are saying the anti-capitalist stuff is the same as the anti-police stuff because the police uphold capitalism. Yeah, I don't see what you said, so you're gonna have to send it in again. We are working on that, but your job right now is to learn. So we are the more experienced people are working on this.
A lone protester in the middle of Ray Street throws a can at a police line on April 10th, 2001. From 9/11 to 2007, the attacks of September 11th, 2001 interrupted the momentum of social movements in the United States. It took years to fulfill Lorenzo Camboa Irvin's prediction that there would be more uprisings. The authorities had learned from the defeat they had suffered during the WTO meeting in Seattle, when a few hundred police had been outmaneuvered by tens of thousands of protesters. In November 2003, when a few thousand embattled demonstrators gathered in Miami to oppose a summit regarding proposed free trade area of the Americas, a tremendous force of militarized police was prepared to repress them. Many protesters saw tanks on the streets of the United States for the first time.
No, 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 no. New people think I'm always being like, new people think that they can come in here and say, so Karlyn, when you mean these definitions that you're giving us, what you really mean is this. When progressives say privilege, they really mean white? No. 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 The only people who are talking about skin color are on the right, not on the left. I am not speaking to you in code that requires interpretation. They all mean capitalism. Do you know how I know? Because I've gone into progressive trainings and I have asked them in the chat, hey guys, can you tell me how capitalism relates to all of this whiteness stuff? And they say capitalism upholds this entire system for reasons X, Y, B, and Z. I have this on video. When they say whiteness, they mean capitalism. They mean systemic racism. That is true of fucking everyone. It is people on the right who are obsessed with skin color. The left doesn't give a flying fuck about skin color. And this is why conservative media lying to their audiences for years and years and years is dangerous, because now you have millions of people who have been brainwashed to believe something is true that is not true. And it is near impossible. This is why I fucking yell. This is why I fucking yell. Because people need to be smacked in the fucking face with the fact that they don't know what the fuck they're talking about because they got brainwashed by their own media.
Many protesters saw tanks on the streets of the United States for the first time that day, something most people didn't see until media coverage of the Ferguson uprising in August 2014. The authorities had copied the strategy of convergence that protesters had used so effectively against global trade summits in Seattle, Washington, D.C., Quebec City, and Genoa.
Systemic racism means the system that upholds racism. But it's the left that pushes systemic racism. Systemic racism has nothing to do with skin color. Systemic racism is not about skin color. Only literal retards think so, Kristen. Excuse me, the only people that talk about color is the left. No. No. If you are smart enough to understand what I'm saying, then you will understand explicitly the left is talking about systems. They are not talking about skin color. Systemic racism means the system that upholds racism. Institutional racism means, what the fuck do you think I'm doing? What the fuck do you think I'm doing? This is a time for you to shut your fucking mouth and listen. Karlyn, can you please explain the thing? You're in the middle of explaining, but I'm not really listening because I'm typing into the chat. I'm going to speak slower for you, okay? I don't think you're the brightest crayon in the box. The system that upholds racism is called capitalism. That is what they mean when they say systemic racism. The system that upholds racism, the system means capitalism. They are not talking about skin color. They are talking about capitalism, which is the system in the fucking term. It means racial disparities created by capitalism where some people have access to more money and resources and property than other people. That is what they mean when they say white privilege. Does anyone else have any retard questions before we continue? Anyone else? If you got a retard question, now is the time to ask it. Last chance.
The authorities had copied the strategy of convergence that protesters had used so effectively against global trade summits in Seattle, Washington, D.C., Quebec City, and Genoa. It was clear that if future uprisings were to take place, they would have to involve more people than could be coordinated through any particular network or mobilization, and they would have to take the authorities by surprise. The anti-war era, from fall 2001 to summer 2008, was a period of reaction. Protest movements were dominated by liberals and authoritarian socialist front groups that sought to limit the range of tactics and strategies that participants could employ.
Who do you think they're meaning? Authoritarian socialist groups, front groups that sought to limit the range of tactics. And talking about what's the PSL even around back then? So when the left is talking about the Party for Socialism and Liberation, when Antifa is talking about the Party for Socialism and Liberation, they say the Party for Socialism and Liberation, which is the only leftist group that most conservatives have ever heard of, are an authoritarian socialist front group that sought to limit the range of tactics and strategies participants can employ. What they're saying is, some socialist groups don't want us to use violence. We do want to use violence. So fuck those authoritarian front groups that don't want us to use violence. That is literally what they are saying there. But I don't know if the PSL was around back then. I don't remember when the PSL was created.
The anti-war era, from fall 2001 to summer 2008,
might have been another group,
was
though.
a period of reaction. Protest movements were dominated by liberals and authoritarian socialist front groups that sought to limit the range of tactics and strategies that participants could employ. At the same time, as a consequence of the previous cycle of protest against police racism and murder, many local movements against police brutality have been channeled towards demanding civilian review boards and police oversight committees.
That's reform.
Which rarely had any actual impact on police violence.
Yeah, they're saying all of this police reform is not actually going to change the system because the police are a fundamentally racist institution.
Many local movements against police brutality have been channeled towards demanding civilian review boards and police oversight committees, which rarely had any actual impact on police violence. In some parts of the United States, this was so successful that anarchists perceived local organizing
I didn't think it was
racist police
I didn't think it
violence
was
as
them, right?
hopelessly.
Like, I wonder who they were referring to back then. Maybe it was like, I bet you it was the ISO. I bet you they were referring to like the International Socialist Organization or something like that.
In some parts of the United States, this was so successful that anarchists perceived local organizing against racist police violence as hopelessly co-opted and reformist. 2008. In 2007, aiming to regain momentum at the end of the Bush era, anarchists around the United States began to prepare for mass mobilizations against the Democratic and Republican National Convention scheduled.
Antifa back in 2008. Remind me who was running for president in 2008 for the Democrats. Remind me who that was. What was that guy's name? What was that guy's name that was running for president in 2008 for the Democratic Party? You're telling me Antifa was preparing for mass mobilization against the Democrat and Republican conventions, even though it was Obama running for president in 2008? Guys, you need to understand that Antifa hates the Democrats. Antifa does not vote for the Democrats. Antifa does not support the Democrats. For as long as they have existed, they've been fucking protesting the Democrats. And no, they didn't like Obama.
In 2007, aiming to regain momentum at the end of the Bush era, anarchists around the United States began to prepare for mass mobilizations against the Democratic and Republican National Convention scheduled for summer 2008. A countrywide network dubbed Unconventional Action took the lead in coordinating,
Correct, chicken
drawing
spot.
on the convergence
Exactly.
model that the anti-capitalist movement had made famous at the turn of the century. Around this time, anarchists in North America were beginning to encounter the first clumsy translations of the call, the coming insurrection, and the works of Ticken, all hailing from the same milieu in France. Many Anglophone readers initially conflated this political tendency with the older brand of insurrectionist anarchism exemplified by Alfredo Bonanno. The French text drew much of their
telling you
appeal from
what they're
association
inspired
with
by.
the anti-police riots that had taken place in the urban peripheries of France in October and November 2005, which struck many readers as more interesting than anything that had recently occurred in the U.S. The protests at the party conventions that summer delivered mixed results.
Oh, hello, Bashback movement. Oh, hello. We have a bashback mention in the Antifa historical retrospective. Oh, hello. Bashback is a specific queer militant movement, not exactly the same thing as Antifa, but many people in Antifa are involved in bashback. Just because someone's involved in an Antifa group doesn't make them bashback. Not everyone, I think, involved in bashback could fairly be talked about as Antifa. It's kind of its own little culty thing, but like certainly they are related and like connected to each other.
The protests at the party conventions that summer delivered mixed results, but the organizing around them revitalized anarchist networks across the country, for example.
By the way, just so you guys know, Andy No didn't know anything about the Bashback movement until I fucking told him about it. And then he pretended he came up with it himself and then still proceeded to get it wrong when he was informing his audience, because Andy was referring to Bashback in the UK, which specifically says on their website they are not the same thing as Bashback in America. And Andy didn't know that because he didn't bother to do his own research, because Andy No pays other people to do his research for him. He doesn't actually do it himself. And so Andy No had no idea he was misinforming millions of people because he didn't know what the fuck he was talking about, because I was the one that told him about Bashback, but he didn't pay close enough attention when I tried to educate him, and he fucking ignored it and then got it wrong and misinformed and lied to millions of people. You're welcome.
The protests at the party conventions that summer delivered mixed results, but the organizing around them revitalized anarchist networks across the country, for example, giving rise to Bashback in the Bay Area, which hosted one of the most vibrant anarchist milieu in the country at that time. The local unconventional action Group UA in the Bay continued to meet after conventions in order to organize local actions. At the same time,
see, so this is an example of an Antifa naming convention that is kind of like separate from the ones I gave you guys earlier. So this is an Antifa group called Unconventional Action. Now, it does still have action in the title, so you're seeing a reference to, again, the Anti-Racist Action Network or Direct Action or something like that. So maybe that's another naming convention we can add to the list. Like if they're saying Action or Action Network or something like that, it probably does have to do with Antifa. But this is the trouble with tracking Antifa groups, because they all have different names, and the vast majority of the time, Antifa is not going to actually be in the name.
At the same time, the global financial crisis of 2008 was setting in. The first significant responses to it took place overseas. December 2008. On December 6, 2008, police in Greece murdered a 15-year-old anarchist named Alexandros Grigoropoulos. Anarchists all around Greece immediately precipitated a countrywide insurrection, attacking police, destroying business districts, and occupying universities. This ushered in an era of worldwide resistance to austerity measures and police violence. As Graffiti in Athens put it, sometimes tear gas can make you see better. Demonstrators chase off riot police in Greece in May 2010. In the Bay Area, anarchists organized a solidarity march that unexpectedly succeeded in pushing past police to enter the Westfield.
No. We're not lazy fuckers here. We're not lazy. We don't use AI to do research. We don't scrape the web hoping to come up with something. We actually do real research in the real world using human beings so that we know it is accurate. What you're talking about is lazy fucking conservative bullshit that leads to lies and misinformation being spread all over the world because they don't take the time to understand what they're fucking talking about. We don't do that shit here. This is why our stuff takes longer, but it's also higher quality than anything that anyone else is fucking doing.
In the Bay Area, anarchists organized a solidarity march that unexpectedly succeeded in pushing past police to enter the Westfield shopping mall during the Christmas rush. As participants in UA in the Bay reported afterwards, we regrouped outside the entrance to the mall.
This is why half of the shit you get from Data Republican is completely fake, because Data Republican is using AI to do a really shitty analysis that probably half of the shit in Data Republican's reportings, you guys understand AI lies all the time, right? Probably half the shit in Data Republican stuff isn't even fucking real. I have caught Data Republican lying on more than one occasion, provided her with evidence, and then she blocked me because she's an evil, deaf cunt on the internet who likes attention and money, but she doesn't actually actually care about informing the public, who's using a shitty AI tool that is probably making shit up to support whatever conclusion she wants it to have, and she's not checking it against evidence in the real world, which is misinforming millions of people, including politicians. So fuck that, a Republican. That cunt's lying to the public. I don't give a fuck that she's deaf and she wants sympathy for it. I don't give a fuck. She is lying to millions of people.
At this point, so many curious shoppers had gathered that it was impossible for police to enter the crowd and arrest anyone else. Several of our comrades...
That Republican literally used to be a DEI advocate when working in the tech industry. So conservatives are lifting up a literal fucking liberal who is using AI to do shitty analysis to lie to them. This person that was promoting DEI in the tech industry like 5 fucking minutes ago. But she's deaf and she's telling us what we want to hear. Okay, conservatives, good luck. Good luck.
Several of our comrades were dragged past us by squads of police and into a paddy wagon on the street. Some demonstrators got back on the sound system and began to denounce the police. Unexpectedly, the message resonated with a number of the shoppers, many of whom were people of color who may have had their own beef with the law. Boisterous chants of "fuck the police" began to echo off the buildings. This was a sign of things to come. December 31st, 2008. On New Year's Eve 2008, a Bay Area rapid transit officer murdered Oscar Grant. Like the beating of Rodney King, this atrocity was captured on video. It circulated widely on the internet. January 7th, 2009.
I never heard
On
about
January 7th, the day of Oscar Grant's funeral, an ad hoc group dubbed the Coalition Against Police Execution organized a rally at the Fruitvale BART station, where Grant had been killed. The rally drew perhaps 1,000 people. The organizers intended to register their disapproval of the police and enable people to let off steam without things getting out of hand.
Yeah, I bet.
According to the established
yeah, I bet.
model. Participants in UA and the Bay have described what happened next. A member of the crowd would get on the mic and demand action, invigorating the protesters and calling for the crowd to march. Immediately after, the organizers would take back the mic, call for calm, and restate their belief that we should channel our energy into legitimate channels. They would promise to march in 10 minutes or after this amazing next speaker. This went on for a number of hours, and the crowd grew restless. The crowd continued to swell as this continued. A group of anarchists began to gather toward the back of the rally. After a while, it became apparent that
So what they're saying is the organizers of this march weren't engaging in violence and destruction to let people blow off steam in response to this police killing. And Antifa wanted to engage in violence and destruction, so they took it upon themselves to do that. So again, guys, you do have to distinguish between all these groups. Not every group on the far left, they don't agree with each other. There are groups on the far left who are revolutionary communists. They do want to overthrow the US government, but they don't actually agree with Antifa's tactics on like a day-to-day basis. They don't want to engage in violence. They don't want to engage in destruction. They don't want to set fires to things. They don't want to like break windows and shit like that. There are many, many, many revolutionary communists who are really looking at it as more of like an academic exercise, and they still want to do terrible shit. And we should get those people fired from their jobs because a lot of them are college professors. We should absolutely get those people fired from their jobs, like 100%. But I want people to be able to distinguish between Antifa and other groups on the revolutionary left, because Antifa is a subset of the revolutionary communist left. They are not all encompassing. They do not agree with the other groups. They don't work with the other groups. They are their own specific thing. It does not benefit us to conflate the two.
After a while, it became apparent that the organizers had no intention of marching, while a good many protesters did. So the anarchist bloc, not being ones to wait for permission, began beating improvised drums and left, accompanied by the vast majority of the crowd, including the rally organizers. That was the crucial moment when, after a period of malaise, anti-police movements in the United States became ungovernable once again. The fact that members of UA in the Bay helped to initiate the night's events makes it possible to trace a continuous through line from the mass mobilizations of the turn of the century. Anti-capitalist movement through the cycle of anti-police uprisings that stretch from the Oscar Grant Rebellion to the George Floyd Revolt and beyond.
So I'm going to read this again. I want to read this again and make sure people understand this. The fact that members of UA in the Bay helped to initiate the night's events makes it possible to trace a continuous line from the mass mobilization of the turn of the century anti-capitalist movement through the cycle of the anti-police uprisings. The anti-capitalist movement is the anti-police uprisings. Does everyone understand? This is what Antifa believes. Regardless of whether you agree with them, it doesn't fucking matter. They're saying, ever since these events, the anti-capitalist movement has gone side by side, basically, with the anti-police movement. They are telling you they are the same fucking thing.
Anti-capitalist movement through the cycle of anti-police uprisings that stretch from the Oscar Grant Rebellion to the George Floyd Revolt and beyond. Everything escalated after we turned toward the police station. Several blocks on, the march met a solitary police car with 2 officers inside. The crowd quickly approached the surprised officers. Being boxed in, they abandoned their car and fled on foot. People started...
Bro. No. Bro, first of all, the anti-ICE protesting never stopped. Are you confused? Do you think the anti-ICE protesting stopped and then started again? You're saying the current ICE protests? These are the same protests that have been going on for a year and a half. They have never stopped. They've literally never stopped. So I have no idea what's surfacing in conservative retard media. So I have no idea. But, well, I don't give a fuck about conservative retardation. I don't care what conservatives are covering. I don't know. Go ask a conservative retard what's surfacing in conservative media. I have no fucking idea because I don't lower myself to watch that trash. And yeah, bro, you're taking up too much fucking airtime right now. If you don't have a question about something that we're reading, I need you to fucking zip it. You're starting to annoy other people in the chat. I understand you're new here, but...
People started jumping on the hood and roof, while others smashed out the windows. A flaming dumpster appeared out of nowhere and careened toward the car. Just as it smashed into the car, we looked to our left and saw a phalanx of cops in full riot gear approaching us. They began unloading pepper bombs and other less lethal ammunition. The crowd fled into the surrounding streets, and the riot was on. As another anarchist recounted, not everyone immediately understood the significance of these events. Later that night in the holding cell, some of those arrested had moments of serious regret as they speculated about the possible charges they might face. A seasoned black organizer who had also been rounded up addressed the group. In 10 years, nah, fuck it. In 6 months, you ain't gonna remember sitting in here right now. All you'll remember is the night the town stood up. Afterwards, according to the report from participants in UA in the Bay, the police, town officials, reformist organizers, and other authoritarians sought to undermine the solidarity that had made the riots possible by focusing blame on white anarchists, casting them as outside agitators. In the days following the riot,
they're making fun of the fact that conservatives call them outside agitators.
In the days following the riot, public outrage seemed to focus on anarchists participating in the uprising. News outlets published articles in which they blamed anarchist provocateurs for the violence. This was frustrating, but not entirely unexpected. One commentator said, if they're blaming us, at least they're not blaming other, less privileged participants. For the record, anarchists were present for all aspects of the uprising and acted in unity with other rioters, despite other subsequent attempts to drive a wedge between anarchists and other participants. There were times when anarchists shared skills garnered through years of street demonstrations, such as how to conceal one's identity or evade police.
You don't say.
But it's disingenuous to characterize anarchists as playing a leadership role. Anarchists worked side by side with a diverse crowd that night.
Okay,
rage-
hang on. hang on. If you do not understand that the left is non-hierarchical, you do not understand what they just said, okay? It's disingenuous to characterize anarchists as playing a leadership role. How you might read that if you don't understand the left is anarchists won't lead. Anarchists aren't really leading this. They're not the ones setting the tone for this. You know, they wouldn't do that. Anarchists would never put themselves in a leadership position because they don't believe in hierarchy. That does not mean that they are not basically the ones out there doing this stuff. It means they're saying, we would never put ourselves in a hierarchical position over someone else. Leadership to them means hierarchy. They're not saying they weren't deeply influential. They're saying they weren't leading it. Instead, anarchists work side by side with a diverse crowd that night. They're non-hierarchical. They're horizontal. They're horizontal. They worked side by side. They were in solidarity. Thank you for the super chat. I would be interested in a sort of recap stream from you on how we got to where we are today. It would give some how about you do this? How about you go over to my Substack, which is Karlyn, KARLYN.substack.com. And normally new to my work start here is in the middle of the page, but right now it's on the side because we have a spy stream today. But click on this link. You can find it here on the side, or it might be in the middle of the page on a different day. And it says new to my work start here. And I need you to scroll down and I need you to watch Re-Education and Anti-Communist Introduction to the Far Left. That will give you a good grounding and a deep dive into the language of the left, which is actually more important. Then you need to watch How to Speak Socialist. Then you can watch the Introduction to Queer Marxism, which is basically an hour-long lecture about the evolution of queer Marxism in this country. You can also go back and watch that Socialism Saturday episode on the skinheads against racial prejudice, the Sharps, and that's a really good place to start. So I thank you for the super chat. I feel like I already have enough places for people to start, and that is what I would recommend people do if they want access to that information.
Anarchists worked side by side with a diverse crowd that night. But the rage that fueled the fire came from those who faced brutal police repression every day of their lives. In The Failure of Nonviolence, Peter Gelderloos recalls how at a demonstration a week later, aspiring white allies from an organization that claimed to oppose white supremacy attempted to exert paternalistic control over both anarchists and angry black youth in the name of safety. During the January 14th, 2009 protest for Oscar Grant, a week after the first riots, white activists from the Catalyst Project, together with people from different churches and NGOs, donned bright vests and linked arms to protect.
They're saying, when they say white, they do not mean white skin color. They mean capitalist activists. They're basically talking about the good liberals, guys. Like white in this case is, again, not a reference to skin color. It's a reference to the good liberals and progressives because they believe Democrats, liberals, and progressives uphold capitalism, whereas they want to destroy capitalism. So when they're saying white activists, they're saying like these good liberals from these different churches and these NGOs, and they put on these fucking vests and they linked arms to protect property and prevent rioting. They are not saying white skin color. They are saying the liberals who want to uphold capitalism and from these stupid NGOs, and they linked arms to protect property. Capitalism means private property ownership, and prevent the rioting. Fuck them. They don't want to let us riot and destroy shit. No, it is easiest to think of. We do not make shit up here, David. We do not invent new things. It is too confusing for people. The easiest way to think about it is fucking capitalism. And if you cannot handle that whiteness means capitalism and that's just too much for you, you're not going to make it here, bro. You're not going to make it here. Does everyone understand this? You need to learn how to code switch in your head. They are not saying white skin color. They are saying the good liberals upholding capitalism and protecting property and preventing us from participating in violence. 1 in the chat if you understand what I'm saying. 2 in the chat if you're confused. They mean anyone with access to property and resources. They are not saying skin color. And that's like the second time you've done this, and don't think I'm not keeping note of that. Okay. I'm seeing a lot of people not answering in the chat. So can everyone please answer in the chat so I know if you're confused or not? If you're confused, you need to ask a question. But don't not answer just because you're confused. If you are confused, ask a reasonable question.
Don bright vests and linked arms to protect property and prevent rioting. Many accused any white person they saw, some of whom were Oakland residents,
liberal,
some of whom were not, of irresponsibly endangering youth of color. They didn't say anything about all the white people who stay home.
Youth of color means oppressed, people from poorer homes, people who don't have access to family wealth, people whose parents rent instead of own. That is what they are saying. If a black kid comes from a rich family, that kid is not going to be a youth of color because he comes from a rich family. Daddy is a very famous doctor and makes $10 million a year. That is not a youth of color. That is not what they are talking about here. They are talking about people from non-property owning families who have less access to money and resources than other people. I don't give a fuck about what was happening in the Russian Revolution. That's not what we're doing here. If you think that's what you're doing here, you're not paying attention. I'm sorry. Would they ever call a white-skinned kid a youth of color? Yes. If that kid was from a poor family, yes, they would. Youth of color does not mean fucking skin color. It means oppressed class. Obama's daughters are not youth of color. That is not what they mean. That is a great fucking example. Barack Obama is basically fucking white. He was the president of the United States. He's white. He's a property owner. He's rich. He's powerful. Like,
they didn't say anything about all the white people who stay home every time the cops kill a young black man. Despite these challenges, anarchists strengthened their relationships with the grassroots participants in the revolt.
Yes. Barack Obama would be a white supremacist. Yes. Have you not been paying attention for the last 2 hours when they've been shitting on Obama? They've shit on Obama like 3 fucking times in this essay. Obama upholds capitalism. Capitalism is white supremacy. Yes.
Despite these challenges, anarchists strengthened their relationships with the grassroots participants in the revolt by playing a significant role in the subsequent legal support process. The issue is discussed in greater detail here. You can read more about the Oscar Grant riots in the text Unfinished Acts. Anarchists participated in the Oscar Grant riots on account of their rage against police and white supremacy and their desire to deter the state from killing people. But this also reflected intentional strategizing about how anarchists might open up new horizons of possibility. In December 2008, after the Greek insurrection, a small number of anarchists intentionally promoted 2 tactical proposals as a way to break out of the impasse that summit hopping and other approaches from the so-called anti-globalization era had reached. These 2 proposals were university occupations and anti-police revolt. Although both of these had occurred in the United States before, these anarchists believed that they had untapped potential. These experiments began humbly, with a few dozen people occupying buildings at the New School in New York and a few hundred people rioting in Oakland after Oscar Grant was murdered. The former led indirectly
Okay, listen, bro, Doug, we got a channel membership. Thank you, Doug, for the channel membership. I appreciate it. Bro, I'm going to be real honest with you, and I'm trying to give you constructive feedback so you stop doing this shit. Every single time you ask a question, you're doing it in a way to try to own the libs and call them hypocrites. It's not fucking productive. What you are talking about right now is low-level bullshit that doesn't fucking matter. It doesn't fucking matter. It really doesn't. I know it makes you feel superior. I know you guys love owning the libs more than anything else in the world. I know you guys really think that owning the libs and saying, they're just massive hypocrites, okay? I know you guys think that's going to solve all the problems, but it actually does nothing. And you need to stop that if you're actually going to learn this. I've been doing this a long time. People who just own the libs with this, they're massive hypocrites for me. Those people never learn. They never learn. They never like understand what's going on. And they eventually just get kicked out of the channel because they're fucking annoying.
The former led indirectly via the Occupy Everything slogan of the student occupation movement.
So I'm trying to
and
help
the subsequent
you, okay?
occupation of the
But
Capitol
you
building
have
in
to
Madison
listen.
to the Occupy movement. The latter set a precedent for the revolts in Ferguson and later, in May 2020, Minneapolis. The long-term potential of those models was not immediately apparent in their awkward beginnings.
You rock!
Nor were the permutations that the movements arising from those initial examples would undergo. Facing forward. 2. The riots. Anarchists always seek to participate in struggle.
Old sub, it would take gifted channel memberships. W's to you, good sir, my patron. Thank you for your ongoing perpetual support, my friend. You rock. What a fucking legend. Old sub, the king.
Anarchists always seek to participate in struggles against white supremacy, police, and oppression. But in the years following the Oscar Grant rebellion, many anarchists in the United States shifted from focusing on activist campaigns and mass mobilizations to seeking to participate in and spread social unrest. To some extent, this reflected the influence of overseas anarchist movements and ideas. But
there's nothing really happening on June 14th. It's just a concert. I really wouldn't worry about it. They're literally just having like a virtual concert or something. So that's not a real thing. We're not even really paying attention to it. I think it's not going to happen. We're talking the next so-called No Kings protest. This isn't really going to be a big deal. I wouldn't really worry about it that much. W Chicago, appreciate it.
To some extent, this reflected the influence of overseas anarchist movements and ideas. But it was no coincidence that this occurred after the 2008 recession intensified the pressure on the population at large, especially oppressed communities. Suddenly, although reactionary attitudes lingered, the years 2009 to 2014 saw a tremendous amount of controversy about violence versus nonviolence. Countercultural groups were not the only ones seeking to engage in resistance. 2010 to 2011. Early in 2010, 2 participants in Void Network, a Greek anarchist collective, embarked on a speaking tour of the United States to discuss a book about the Greek insurrection of December 2008. We Are an Image from the Future. They presented at the Black Rose Info Shop.
Hans in with 10 gifted channel memberships. Hans, I was reliably told that you're me on Twitter last night. I was reliably told that you're actually me and that I'm actually gifting myself and my community these 10 gifted channel memberships. But I know for sure because Hans once sent me a picture that they, them really is a trans Black Latinx. And so I know that you're not me and I'm not you, Hans. I appreciate it, bro. You rock, fucking legend. W's in the chat to you, good sir.
They presented at the Black Rose Info Shop in Portland, Oregon on March 21st. The speakers emphasized that when the police kill a person, the essential thing is to act immediately in response with whatever numbers you can muster. The following day, Portland police murdered Jack Dale Collins, the 3rd killing they committed in a period of weeks. Local anarchists met in a park and immediately set out, chanting cops, pigs, murderers, a chant borrowed from the Greek insurrection. When they reached Burnside Avenue, they pulled dumpsters into the street, smashed the windows of a bank and a Starbucks, and clashed with police outside the local police station. A communique appeared immediately afterwards, reading, in part, "We fight against police violence because we feel rage and sadness whenever they kill someone. We fight in solidarity with everyone else who fights back. And by fighting, we are remembering what it is like to be human. In these moments when we surprise ourselves, we catch little glimpses of the world we fight for. This action introduced property destruction and autonomous black bloc marches in Portland to a context beyond the large demonstrations of the fading anti-war movement.
So all of the destructive direct actions and black bloc in Portland started in 2010. Isn't that interesting? Because I once said that to Andy No. I said, Andy, I think this shit started in Portland around 2008, 2009, 2010. And Andy No said to me, no, Karlyn, it started with Trump in 2016. And I literally do have the DMs to back this up, Andy. So once again, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. I literally said to Andy, this was fucking 3 or 4 years ago. This is like one of the first interactions I ever had with him. I said, Andy, can you tell me what around, because I was finding a lot of stuff about equity in the schools. I was finding all this anti-capitalist shit about equity in the Portland schools that went back to like 2008, 2009, 2010. And I was like, can we connect directly the stuff being taught in the Portland schools to the rise of Antifa in Portland? That was my thought process at the time. And I asked Andy No about this, and he said, oh, no, it all started in 2016. Did it, Andy? Because I've got Antifa's documents saying it started in the summer of 2010 under Obama, you lying, grifting motherfucker. Once again, I was proven right years later based on Antifa's own fucking history, Andy. Can I get a Karlyn was right in the chat for the fact that I was right years ago about this stuff before I was even really into it? And I brought this to Andy No, and he lied to me and told me something that wasn't true. And now I have direct evidence that Andy No was wrong and I was right. I was right again.
This action introduced property destruction and autonomous black bloc marches in Portland to a context beyond the large demonstrations of the fading anti-war movement. It precipitated a cycle of anti-police struggles in Portland through the spring and summer of 2010, which functioned as a bridge between the Oscar Grant riots and everything that came afterwards. Crucially, anarchists up and down the West Coast were in continuous communication and coordination throughout this period. On August 30th, 2010, a Seattle police officer murdered John T. Williams, a 50-year-old Native American man. Police in the Puget Sound area murdered 4 other men that same week. Anarchists in Seattle called for an assembly on September 21st, at which to discuss how to respond to police violence. The invitation was open to all, with one caveat. Arguments for police reform are not welcome at this assembly.
Oh, because the far left and Antifa does not believe the police can be reformed, and therefore they must be abolished.
Arguments for police reform are not welcome at this assembly. If you choose to express good faith in this violent and oppressive system, you will be asked to leave. The only requirement for attendance at this assembly is a desire for the total abolition of the dominant social order that commits violence against us, including the police force. To this end, political parties are unwelcome, including so-called revolutionary ones. The participants reached a rough consensus that the important thing was to interrupt city officials' efforts to channel anger.
They're saying socialist political parties are not welcome because they believe that elections fundamentally uphold capitalism.
The participants reached a rough consensus that the important thing was to interrupt city officials' efforts to channel anger into dialogue and reformism. Nonetheless, it was difficult to break the reformist organizers' grip on what could happen in the streets. In burning the bridges they are building, one participant describes how months later, in January 2011, a tame protest march organized by the authoritarian Revolutionary Communist Party finally got out of organizer control. As the march wandered to the crosswalk of a busy intersection, a woman unknown to the anarchists,
that party doesn't exist
unaffiliated
anymore,
with the
by the way,
RCP, and holding only an umbrella, refused to leave the crosswalk. She blocked the city bus, which in turn blocked several lanes of traffic, which quickly backed up for blocks. While she stood there defiantly, she began to mock the other demonstrators for their passivity and cowardice. The few anarchists quickly joined her in the intersection. To the organizers and cops' dismay, the demonstrators ended up blocking the intersection for hours. This anecdote captures the way that these movements often escalated. The impetus generally came from ordinary people from the communities impacted by police violence. But because of their analysis of power, anarchists were usually among the first to join in. A series of combative marches took place in Seattle between January and March, in which participants repeatedly damaged police cars and defended each other from police attacks. When it came out that no charges would be filed against the officer who murdered John Williams, many hundreds of people took the streets, taking up the combative tactics that a small number of anarchists had demonstrated. The movement in Seattle showed that the Oscar Grant uprising was not a fluke. As Lorenzo Camboa Irvin had foreseen, the conditions that made it possible existed all around the United States. This was borne out in the Bay Area the following July, when people responded to a string of police murders by temporarily shutting down multiple Bay Area rapid transit stations and once again taking the streets. Within a few hours of hearing word of SFPD's latest atrocity, we called for a march against the police in the Mission District. About 100 of us gathered, donned masks, and marched down Valencia
She did
ST
sign a book
toward the
for me.
Mission Police Station. We attacked the first pig car that approached. We attacked ATMs and a Wells Fargo as well. We upturned newspaper boxes and trash bins.
See, guys, Antifa documents their direct actions like this. They publish about them openly. They are not obfuscating what they're doing. If you want to know what Antifa is doing, you can probably find them writing about it somewhere on a website, which is what makes it even more bizarre that the Trump administration fucking refuses to arrest any of them. Would it be safe to say Antifa believes anarchist is the only true form of democracy and communism? Yes. That would be accurate. Yeah.
We upturned newspaper boxes and trash bins, throwing them into the streets at the encroaching riot cops. We screamed in the pigs' faces
Right
and
on.
confronted them at their front door. By 1 a.m., we had dispersed without arrest. Anarchists marching in Seattle on February 16th, 2011. At the same time that the sequence of events was playing out in Seattle and San Francisco, movements against police violence were assuming a central role in unrest outside the United States, echoing the events in Greece in 2008. On December 17th, 2010, a young Tunisian named Mohamed Bouazizi had set himself on fire to protest his treatment at the hands of police, setting in motion a wave of uprisings that came to be known as the Arab Spring. The day of protest that sparked the Egyptian Revolution of 2011 was scheduled for National Police Day, January 25th, by the Facebook page We Are All Khaled Said, which memorialized another young man killed by police. In August 2011, riots broke out in the UK in response to the police murder of Mark Duggan. It isn't just that the police are called in to repress every movement as soon as it poses any threat to prevailing distribution of power, although that remains as true as ever. Rather, repression itself has been producing the flashpoints of revolt. The thin blue line is a burning fuse. Demonstrators confront police in Egypt at the opening of 2011, September 2011. On September 17, 2011, the Occupy movement got underway in Manhattan, expressing a protest against the prioritization of finance capital in the state response to the recession, but also a rudimentary opposition to capitalism in general. In fact, the movement didn't gain much traction on the popular imagination until footage of police attacks circulated later that month. After that, Occupy spread like wildfire. Occupy represented an improvement on the convergence model in that it presented a reproducible and decentralized framework, drawing people to a rapidly proliferating number of flashpoints. The structure of the movement reflected the participation of anarchists from the very beginning, including at least one Greek anarchist, who reputedly was responsible for the intervention that led to the horizontal assemblies.
You don't say.
In Oakland, the legacy of the Oscar Grant riots set the stage for the Bay Area to host the high watermark of Occupy. When police evicted Occupy Oakland, fracturing the skull of Iraq War veteran Scott Olson, the movement responded with general strike, including a blockade of the port of Oakland. 3 years later, in From Occupy to Ferguson, we explore how the Occupy movement reached its limits because of pacifism, fundamental contradictions within democracy, and the absence of a critical mass of working-class people of color. Why did the Occupy movement subside without achieving its object of transforming society?
Working class people of color. When they say people of color, They mean working class. They mean proletarian. They mean oppressed. That is why they are saying working class people of color. The people of color are the working class. It is not to say they are all black. They are working class. Being working class or proletariat is what makes them people of color. Does everyone understand? It's not about color. It's not skin color. It's not about skin color. It is about, are you a member of the working class? Color means visible by capitalism, not blending in invisible white norm. Mizakan reads all their books. He knows all the fucking definitions.
First, it offered almost no analysis of racialized power, despite the central role of race in dividing labor struggles and poor people's resistance in the U.S. Second, perhaps not coincidentally, its discourse was largely legalistic and reformist, was premised on the assumption that the laws and institutions of the state are fundamentally beneficial or at least legitimate. Finally, it began as a political rather than social movement, hence the decision to occupy Wall Street instead of acting on a terrain closer to most people's everyday lives, as if capitalism were not a ubiquitous relation, but something emanating from the stock market. As a result of these three factors, the majority of participants in Occupy were activists, newly precarious exiles from the middle class, and members of the underclass, in roughly that order. The working poor were notably absent. The simplistic sloganeering of Occupy obscured the lines of conflict that run through our society from top to bottom. Police are part of the 99% is technically true, economically speaking, but so are most rapists and white supremacists.
Police are technically working class, but so are rapists and white supremacists. The police are class traitors, guys. They do not believe that the police are included in the working class. They might technically buy, money, but they're class traitors, so...
The simplistic sloganeering of Occupy obscured the lines of conflict that run through our society from top to bottom. Police are part of the 99% is technically true, economically speaking, but so are most rapists and white supremacists. All of this meant that when the police came to evict the encampments and kill the movement, Occupy had neither the numbers nor the fierceness, nor the analysis it would have needed to defend itself. When a movement reaches its limits and subsides, it illustrates the obstacles future movements will have to surpass. 2012 to 2013. All around the country, however, struggles against police violence were cross-pollinating with the fiercest elements of the Occupy movement. On October 17, 2011, 10 days after Occupy Atlanta got underway, a march including anarchists departed from the encampment at Woodruff Park to protest the police murder of 19-year-old Jotavia Stafford. A month later, police murdered Dwight Person in front of his family in an illegal no-knock warrant that was addressed to a different house, and another march departed from the park. Shortly before Christmas, a police officer shot 19-year-old Ariston Waiters in the back while he was handcuffed, and once again, a march took place in response. Each of these involved a larger contingent of anarchists employing black bloc tactics, as chronicled in Don't Die Wondering. Atlanta against the police winter 2011-2012. On February 26, 2012, a white vigilante murdered Trayvon Martin, a 17-year-old black young man in Florida, enraging people all around the country. In Atlanta, institutional organizers sought to gain control of a response schedule for March 29th. A friend of ours had made an anonymous Facebook profile to create the event and had billed it as a march. This was all very intentional. A few careerists, however, used the opportunity to get a permit for the event and to move it to the Capitol. They held press conferences announcing that it was happening there and that it would simply be a rally, not a march. They, of course, get to decide who speaks and who doesn't. Nonetheless, after a carefully controlled rally, a multi-ethnic crowd of several dozen people set off on a breakaway march. Someone jogged up to a Park Atlanta meter and smashed the screen with a large wooden dowel bearing a black flag. Someone else, without a shirt tied around their face, kicked a newspaper stand into the street, and several others dragged him into the intersection. A Capitol cop jogged up from behind the march and began chastising us. Hey, you, pick that box up this minute. People yelled back at him and picked up the pace a little bit. The march turned a corner and found itself on an empty street with a large number of police cruisers parked outside a government building. The lone cop, following the march, quickly turned and ran when someone jogged up to the nearest squad car and smashed out its front window with a wooden dowel. Oh! The crowd all yelled at once. Someone else ran up behind them with a hammer. They took out the windows of another squad car, and someone after them jumped up onto the car and stomped in the windshield, while some people dragged barricades into the streets. Others continued smashing the windows out of every police vehicle and luxury car on the street for 2 blocks.
Sounds familiar,
In July
right?
2012, locals in Anaheim, California rioted after officers murdered a man. In March 2013, people in Brooklyn, New York responded to police murdering 16-year-old Kamani Gray by marching on the 67th precinct and pelting it
I
with
want to
garbage.
point this out too in the last paragraph. They smashed the windows of every police vehicle and luxury car on the street for 2 blocks. Is it possible that a non-white skinned person owned one of those luxury cars? Is it possible that they said this is in Los Angeles? Is it possible that a non-white skinned person owned one of those luxury cars that got their fucking windows smashed out? It is not about skin color. It is about social class, economic class. They don't give a flying fuck. If a black fucking rapper owns a fancy luxury car, they're going to smash out the windows of that car just as much as they're going to smash out the window of anyone with a fancy luxury car because they don't give a fuck about skin color. They only care about class.
In March 2013, people in Brooklyn, New York responded to police murdering 16-year-old Kamani Gray by marching on the 67th precinct and pelting it with garbage and bottles. In Durham, North Carolina, in November 2013, when 17-year-old Jesus Chewy, where mysteriously died of a gunshot wound his head with his hands cupped behind his back in the back of a police cruiser. Anarchists worked with his family to organize a demonstration during which protesters marched to the police station and smashed out its windows. Each of these outbreaks of rebellion lasted only a few hours at a time, but understood as a series, they show that people around the United States were experimenting with more confrontational forms of resistance, learning from each other in a dialogue comprised of actions as well as words. In many cases, anarchists were among the only explicitly politicized participants. From the beginning, police, politicians, liberals, authoritarian socialists, and other aspiring leaders had sought to
Big group
marginalize anarchists by
authoritarian
depicting them as
socialists with
white thrill
liberals.
seekers,
That's
promoting
funny.
a narrative according to which it was anarchists, not police, who were in danger.
Remember, when they say authoritarian socialists, they mean socialists who don't want them to use violence and destruction.
Promoting a narrative according to which it was anarchists, not police, who were endangering people of color as people experimented together in the streets. They also began to push back against this way of
Or
weaponizing
Stalinist.
identity
That can mean
discourse
Stalinist too.
to suppress
Stalinist.
resistance. In April 2012, participants in the movements in Oakland had published Who is Oakland? A lucid corrective. Anti-oppression, civil rights, and decolonization struggles clearly reveal that if resistance is even slightly effective, the people who struggle are in danger. The choice is not between danger and safety, but between the uncertain dangers of revolt and the certainty of continued violence, deprivation, and death. No demographic category of people could possibly share an identical set of political beliefs, cultural identities, or personal values. Accounts of racial, gender, and sexual oppression as intersectional continue to treat identity categories as coherent communities with shared values and ways of knowing the world. No individual or organization can speak for people of color, women, the world's colonized populations, workers, or any demographic category as a whole, though activists of color, female and queer activists, and labor activists from the global north routinely and arrogantly claim this right. These representatives and institutions speak on behalf of social categories, which are not, in fact, communities of shared opinion. In May 2014, Indigenous Action published Accomplices
Indigenous
Not Allies,
Action.
a critique of allies who continue to center themselves even as they pretend to put themselves at the disposal of other struggles for liberation.
Okay, guys, I want to do a quick time check because we are coming up on the 5:30 hour. Now, you guys know we do have a spy stream that is supposed to start at 5:30. The presentation doesn't actually start till 6 p.m. So we have until 6 p.m. Okay. We have to stop a little bit earlier because I have to set up the stream, but we do have a little while longer to go through this. I just want to remind people, if you want to come to our spy stream tonight, it is a supporter exclusive. Make sure you are a YouTube channel member or a Substack supporter before, but like in the next 20 minutes or so, or you will not have access to this. We are going inside a live queer feminist discussion tonight. I hope we have enough time to get through the rest of this article. I think that we probably will. But we do have a little extra time because I padded it a little bit, but we do need to get started in the next 20 minutes or so. So let's try to get through as much as we can before that.
In May 2014, Indigenous Action published Accomplices Not Allies.
All good, bro.
A critique of
time,
allies
Patty, it
who
just takes
continue
time.
to center themselves even as they pretend to put
Chicalago,
themselves at the disposal
W's,
of other
thank
struggles for
you.
liberation. Where struggle is commodity, allyship is currency. Ally has also become an identity, disembodied from any real mutual understanding of support. This kind
They
of
don't like the
relationship
term
generally
ally.
fosters exploitation between both the oppressed and oppressor. The ally and the allied would become entangled in an abusive relationship. They argue that those who are fighting for their own liberation need comrades who have their own reasons to fight. We need to know who has our backs, or more appropriately, who is with us at our sides. These texts help to legitimize the idea that the way to act in solidarity with those on the receiving end of police violence was to fight alongside them, not to try to de-escalate struggles. Demonstrators in Ferguson flip a police car in November 2014. Elsewhere around the globe, resistance to police violence continued to set off upheavals. In 2013, the fair hike protests in Brazil and the Gezi resistance in Turkey both metastasized from small single-issue protests to massive uprisings as a result of police repression. The same thing happened in Eastern Europe, setting off the Ukrainian Revolution at the end of 2013 and sparking the Bosnian uprising of February 2014. In fact, the window of possibility that had opened with the insurrection in Greece was already closing as authoritarian regimes and politics reassert themselves around the world. Nonetheless, in the United States, resistance to the police was only just getting underway. Militarized police in Ferguson, August 2014. 3. The Ferguson Uprising. On July 13, 2013, after the acquittal of the man who murdered Trayvon Martin, people around the country had gathered in protest. At the demonstration in St. Louis on July 14th, anarchists encountered other protesters that they were to meet again a year later. This shows how the movement against police was already starting to produce waves of countrywide action while bringing together people who were prepared to push things further. August 2014. On August 9th, 2014, a police officer stopped an 18-year-old black man named Michael Brown. Witnesses report that the officer shot Brown as he fled with his hands up in surrender. A crowd quickly assembled from the neighborhood. Some locals fired shots into the air and set a dumpster alight. Police responded with an armored riot vehicle, a helicopter, dogs, and assault rifles, but furious mourners forced them to withdraw. The next day, people gathered for a prayer vigil at the site of the shooting, including anarchists from St. Louis. The crowd marched to the police line, yelling insults and throwing things. Police attempted to drive through the crowd, but people surrounded them and smashed out their windows. The police fled. One anarchist described the ensuing situation. The block is ours. The police are maintaining lines at Ferguson Avenue to the south, and just north of the bridge for the 270 interchange to the north. The mile or so between is totally unpoliced and filled with thousands of people. This commercial stretch, full of parasitical businesses, has numerous small roads leading east into the densely populated neighborhoods just a block away. The police, too afraid and outnumbered to enter a residential area seething with outrage, are unable to block those streets. As they hear about what is going on, people are pouring into the commercial district on foot, in cars, on motorcycles. For once, the geography of the suburb is on our side. The uprising in Ferguson crossed a crucial threshold because, for the first time, the rebellion continued beyond a single day. As the unrest persisted, It offered a point of convergence for all who wanted to resist police violence. For nearly 2 weeks, demonstrators faced off with militarized police every night as people around the country watched the events unfolding via news and social media and debated the issues of police violence, repression, and militant tactics. Afterwards, comparing the uprising in Ferguson to the Occupy movement, we argued that the uprising had overcome the limits that the Occupy movement had reached. It's possible to understand the social momentum originating in Ferguson.
So I want people to understand this. I want people to understand the Ferguson riots built on Occupy Wall Street. The Ferguson riots, which may seem disconnected because they are, supposed to be about Black people, whereas Occupy Wall Street was about Wall Street, but they were not disconnected because really they're all riots against capitalism. They are all against capitalism. That is the entire point. And so the Ferguson riots built on what they did in Occupy Wall Street and learned from it in order to get better and more effective. And that's going to be the same with the BLM riots in 2020, and that's going to be the same with the anti-ICE stuff going on right now.
It's possible to understand the social momentum originating in Ferguson as an answer to the failures of Occupy. Where Occupy whitewashed the issue of race, the protests in Ferguson place it front and center. Where Occupy confined itself to the unfavorable terrain of political, physical sites and reformist demands, the people who rose up in Ferguson were fighting on their own streets for their own very lives. Whereas, with the temporary exception of Occupy Oakland, Occupy lacked the will to stand down the police. People in Ferguson braved tear gas and even bullets to do just that. Where Occupy sought to conceal all the different forms of hierarchy and strife that cut through the society beneath the unifying banner of the 99%, the conflicts in Ferguson compelled everyone to confront them. The momentum proceeding from the demonstrations in Ferguson has its own internal tensions, which will become more apparent the further it goes. Is the problem police brutality or policing itself? Is the rightful protagonist of the struggle the local poor person of color, the respectable leader of color, the white ally, or everyone who opposes police killings? If it is the latter, how should we deal with the power imbalances within this everyone? How should demonstrators from outside the most targeted communities relate to conflicts playing out within them, such as disputes over tactics or risk? You can read a full timeline of the Ferguson uprising here and a day-by-day account of one anarchist participation here.
Okay, maybe
a demonstrator in Ferguson faces off with a line of riot police in 2014, November-December 2014. Over the following 3 months, people around the country reflected on the example of the brave fighters who confronted the police in Ferguson, and all the while, police continued to murder people in St. Louis and everywhere else, stoking rage and urgency. On November 24th, when the legal system failed to indict the officer who murdered Michael Brown, demonstrators once again took the streets of Ferguson, confronting a well-prepared, fully militarized occupying army of police and National Guard, and nonetheless striking powerful blows against them. This set off solidarity demonstrations all around the country, after the fashion of the viral model demonstrated by the Occupy movement. The clashes of November and December 2014 arguably reached the highest pitch that popular struggle had attained in the United States in years. The Bay Area saw 17 consecutive days of marches, vandalism, looting, and freeway blockades. 2015 to 2016. On April 12, 2015, police in Baltimore arrested and intentionally brutalized Freddie Gray. He died of his injuries 1 week later. A week after that, demonstrators gathered for a protest that immediately spiraled out of control. Within 2 days, riots, looting, and fires were breaking out all over the city, including in some of the wealthier neighborhoods.
That was my birthday,
The mayor declared a state of emergency.
Thank you.
Called in police from around the state, along with the National Guard, and announced a 7-day curfew. The revolt in Baltimore had escalated more rapidly than the uprising in Ferguson, but the authorities had brought in the National Guard more quickly, as well, shutting the window of possibility. Less than 2 months later, on June 17, 2015, Dylan Roof carried out a white supremacist mass murder at Emmanuel African Methodist Episcopal Church in Charleston, South Carolina. Having been outflanked by grassroots resistance in the streets, the forces of white supremacy were falling back on non-state terrorism. In August 2015, reflecting on the sequence of events across the preceding year, we recognize that future uprisings would have to occur everywhere at once in order to outflank the repression mobilized against them. At the same time, we discerned that a white supremacist backlash was on the way and noted the ways that the revolts were still limited by a narrative prioritizing identity as a measure of the legitimacy of resistance. The conclusion of the essay is worth quoting in full. It is dangerous and unethical to leave the greatest risks to the most vulnerable people. If it makes sense to the most marginalized and targeted to risk their lives to interrupt the functioning of the system that is killing them, it makes even more sense for the rest of us to do so. It's not a question of understanding the uprisings, but of joining and extending them in order to render them unnecessary. That doesn't necessarily mean invading others' neighborhoods. The next time a Ferguson
They're
or a
talking
West
about
Baltimore
overthrowing
erupts, it
capitalism,
might be most
overthrowing the
effective for
system.
those who wish to show solidarity to initiate actions elsewhere in order to overextend the authorities. Nor should it mean centralizing ourselves in the narrative. Solidarity means taking on the same risks that others are exposed to, nothing more, nothing less. The precarious rapport of force that has lasted since the Baltimore uprising will likely persist until another demographic enters the conflict. It's not clear how much further the state can go to maintain the current order by means of pure force. If uprisings occurred in multiple cities in the same region at the same time, or if a much broader range of people got involved, all bets would be off. But as intimated above, the next demographic to enter the space of conflict might well be a reactionary force. South Carolina is not the only place in which struggles against state violence have shifted seamlessly into struggles against
Are we going to have a
autonomous white
Charlottesville
supremacists.
mention,
Some
please?
anarchists and fellow travelers have glibly invoked social war or civil war, without fully grasping that such wars usually end up playing out along ethnic and religious lines in the most reactionary manner. As the
Social
tensions
war,
in our
yep.
society increase, it is up to us to render it possible to imagine other lines of conflict. The Dylan Roofs of the world and their equivalents within the halls of power want nothing better than to see society split into warring racial factions, with poor whites joining police and other defenders of the middle class to suppress the rage of the black and disaffected. White people must not countenance this division, even out of a wrong-headed desire to stand aside out of respect for black autonomy. That would spell doom for the most marginalized people in this struggle, however much good liberals might applaud their courageous efforts from afar. Rather, we have to produce a narrative of multi-ethnic struggle against white supremacy and capitalism by participating
Against white supremacy and capitalism. They are saying them at the same time because they are the same thing.
Rather, we have to produce a narrative of multi-ethnic struggle against white supremacy and capitalism by participating directly in the clashes that are occurring right now both, so that it will be impossible for white supremacists to convince potential converts that the important lines dividing society are racial, and so that those who are more racially and economically marginalized than us will not have cause
Racially
to conclude
and
that they have indeed been
economically.
abandoned. Fighting white supremacy in this context means spreading the clashes with the authorities while crushing autonomous racist initiatives wherever they appear. It means confronting fascists in essentially rearguard battle, but also means taking the initiative in attacking capitalism and the state, intensifying struggles
You
we're
don't
already
say.
in,
Capitalism.
only by foregrounding anarchist solutions to the problems of poor people, including poor white people. Can we make it impossible for racists to recruit from the ranks of the poor?
Someone asks, are poor white people considered black? By only foregoing anarchist solutions to the problems of poor people, including poor white people. This is about class. This is not about race.
Only by foregrounding anarchist solutions to the problems of poor people, including poor white people, can we make it impossible for racists to recruit from the ranks of the poor, white, and angry. A demonstrator in Ferguson
They're
displays a
saying
sign
white
reading,
people can be black
"Nice
too,
night for a
in their
revolution."
way.
In 2014,
White people
police
can be
continue to
oppressed
murder
too.
people, and revolts continue to break out in response. But as a consequence of the authorities' readiness to respond immediately with heavy-handed repression, the movement had reached a plateau. On November 15th, 2015, police officers in Minneapolis murdered Jamar Clark, a 24-year-old black man. In response, demonstrators established an occupation outside the 4th Police Precinct. On November 23rd, far-right vigilantes attacked them, shooting 5 people. Nonetheless, the following July,
Guys, I think we might actually have to do the rest of this later. I think we might have to do the rest of this. Oh man, I never. Oh wait, actually no, we are almost done.
Nonetheless,
Back to
the
reading.
following
We
July,
can do it. I think.
when a police officer murdered
gonna try.
Philando Castile in front of his partner and child during a traffic stop, demonstrators took the streets again, blocking freeway traffic and defending themselves from police. That same July, Baton Rouge police officers murdered Alton Sterling, sparking protests in Baton Rouge and Dallas. During the latter, a gunman killed 5 police officers before the police killed him with a robot-delivered bomb. On August 13th,
Oh, yo, I
2016,
totally missed a super
the
chat
fifth-
over on Rumble. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I missed your super chats over on Rumble. Apologies if I came across as flippant in my last comment. You just as humbled as a former progressive who took white privilege at face value for years to learn I didn't even know my own theory. It's all good, bro. I have so many questions, but don't want to keep slowing down your streams. You're not slowing them down, but you need to go watch the things on my Substack that I've told you to watch. You need to go watch the new to my work section on my Substack. That is what you need to do. I appreciate the donations very much. Thank you. Go to the Substack and watch the stuff I've told you to watch at least 3 times now.
On August 13th, 2016, the fatal police shooting of 23-year-old Sylvia Smith triggered a riot in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. The next month, there were riots in Charlotte, North Carolina in response to the police murdering Keith Lamont Scott. By this point, anarchists were still participating in the front lines of these protests, but in some ways, they had lost ground within the movement. In response to the explosion of activity following the Ferguson uprising, formal Black Lives Matter groups had achieved a new hegemony within protest organizing, whereas previously, institutional leadership had sought to prevent demonstrators from engaging in unpermitted marches or blocking freeways, with the consequence that when that failed, spaces of freedom opened up. Now a new generation of leaders and protest marshals were prepared to lead marches, even onto freeways, but still sought to sideline anarchists in order to retain control. As the tide went out and mass participation dropped, the participants that remained were largely activist groups that successfully leveraged the usual charges of privilege and outside agitators to marginalize anarchists. Many anarchists shifted focus from fighting the police in anti-racist struggles to fighting the fascist movements that were on the rise. This was a risky proposition. It was not auspicious to see the ground of anti-police discourse while moving to an even more potentially lethal field of conflict. But with fascist violence spreading around the country, many anarchists concluded that they had no choice. A Crimothink sticker reading, "Police Not Welcome," behind the burned-out husk of the 3rd Precinct in Minneapolis in 2020. 4. The Trump years. When Donald Trump came into power in 2017, anarchists around the country swung into action, marching against his inauguration,
You don't say.
helping to shut down
It was all
airports in
Antifa
response to the
all
Muslim
along.
ban, and defending their communities from fascist mobilizations. Yet mysteriously, revolts in response to police murders.
Yeah, this is it's so wild to hear them talk about all these events so differently than whatever the mainstream media highlighted. This is one of the things I want you to see, guys. When conservative media and mainstream media too, all media is propaganda, whether it's on the right or the left. When the media talks about these events, they treat them as disjointed events that are not related. They were always related. It was always part of the larger struggle. It was always the same groups. It was the same tactics. It was the same activism. They were never different like movements. They were all interconnected.
Yet mysteriously, revolts in response to police. This is a historical enigma yet to be properly accounted for. Police did not by any means stop murdering Black and brown people. As we wrote in our retrospective on the year 2017, the only city to see a major movement against racist policing in 2017 was St. Louis, where the social movements and tensions that gave rise to the uprising of 2014 had continued unabated. This points to some of the ways that the reaction represented by the Trump administration succeeded in setting back social movements and taking possibilities off the table. Had we missed opportunities to let the communities that are most directly targeted by police know that we are still ready to stand with them when they stand up for themselves outside the useless channels of reformist organizing? Perhaps all that changed was that anarchists and other activists were so busy reacting to fascist violence that they failed to provide the necessary solidarity to the communities most targeted by police violence. The pause in anti-police uprising seems to bear out the hypothesis that, despite the fact that anarchists were rarely central to the revolts, there was some sort of subterranean connection between the two, if only in that they were both downstream of the same developments. The pause and uprisings continued until May 2020. There were a few protests when police killed people, but nothing like what had occurred in Oakland, Seattle, Ferguson, Baltimore, Minneapolis, or Charlotte. This seems to suggest that for good or ill, these uprisings were not just occurring as a consequence of localized outrage on the part of targeted communities, but also because of a shared discourse and imagination regarding the possibility of revolt and the form it could take. The solidarity and support of many different communities and groups, including anarchists, played a crucial role. So revolts against police aren't just mechanistically produced by police violence. They depend on a shared vision, shared reference points, familiarity with previous precedents, a collective capacity to mourn and to care for each other, a shared sentiment that the police lack legitimacy, disillusionment with reform measures, and networks and community institutions that have not been integrated into the processes that preserve the ruling order. Graffiti in New York City during the hot summer of 2020. In 2020,
okay, we are going to have to stop the stream, guys. We almost got to the very end, but I think we get a picture. It looks like they're just like wrapping things up anyway. And so I think that we get a big picture about like the history of how they view these struggles. And I think the biggest thing is that these are all interconnected. They're not separate. They're interconnected. We are going to spy stream right now because technically it doesn't start till 6 p.m. But I always say I'm starting the stream a little earlier. But we do have to hurry it up, guys, because we're cutting it a little close tonight. That's going to be fine though. But we do have to shut down this stream in order to get to spy stream. As a reminder, if you are a new member of the channel and you want to find your spy stream link, just go to the channel membership, the channel homepage, and then click on the post tab, and then that will bring you to the link for tonight's spy stream. When you are a channel member, the very first thing that will appear is the link to the spy stream. If you are on the Substack, you can head over to karlyn.substack.com right on the homepage. If you're on Locals, Patreon, or X, you can find it in the supporter feed on any of those. Rumble, just stay put. We'll be like, you'll just see something pop up over there, so don't worry about that. Guys, I want to thank everyone who donated 53 more channel memberships today and sent in super chats. I really appreciate it. If you got a channel membership, please use it to come to Spy Stream tonight. We're about to go inside a live leftist organizing call. So guys, I will see you over for Spy Stream. I'm ending this one. I'm going to start that one up real quick, and I will